Is it possible to call up every false teacher or wolf and to warn him personally before going public? Hello, Jonathan Ferguson? No, sorry. Listen, I can't call you apostle, but listen, this is Corey Minor. I just want to talk to you about something. Yeah, I wanted to let you know that your teaching is false and heretical. You got a moment? Hello? Hello? Hello, is this Marcus Rogers? Yeah, this is Corey Minor. Hello? No, that's not possible or practical. One common criticism that's often put out for anyone who calls out a false preacher, a false teacher, false prophet, false apostle, false anything, anyone that's espousing heresy, a wolf, is that should we make an effort to contact this person privately first before making a public rebuke or warning? Because of the sheer volume, the sheer number of these people who are on the rise, that just is not practical. That's impossible. And that just assumes that if you try to contact them, that they will hear. Now, full disclosure, I tried to contact Marcus Rogers and some other people in the past. However, they're not very interested in hearing you tell them why their doctrine is wrong, because oftentimes they don't have the theological heft to defend their doctrinal stance. And that's not their point. That's not their purpose. And not after trying to make a doctrinal claim, they're out for their own glory. So let's be clear. We're not talking about calling out someone for a simple doctrinal issue. Number one, all doctrine is fair game. All doctrine is fair game. All doctrine is fair game. If a person who is a brother who I may love, but I may disagree with on a doctrine, I can, or you can, or anyone else can make a statement or a point about why they disagree with that doctrinal stance. If a person who is a brother who I may love, but I may disagree with on a doctrine, I can, or you can, or anyone else can make a statement or a point about why they disagree with that doctrinal stance. If a person who is a brother who I may love, but I may disagree with on a doctrine, I can, or you can, or anyone else can make a statement or a point about why they disagree with that doctrinal stance. Because we're not talking about an issue of salvation, though it may relate to salvation, but we're not talking about a primary issue, an issue that is key and essential to the doctrine. It's how we do so that often matters, but still, all doctrine is fair game. But still, all doctrine is fair game. But still, all doctrine is fair game.
That's you on tape.
Now, as Christians, we are told to tell. There's two things that we're told to tell, two things that we're told to warn. One, we're told to tell the good news and everything that comes with it, all the good stuff. And we're also told to tell the bad things, the warnings, things that can hurt us, things that can kind of leave us in a bad spot. What kind of person would you be? Let's just say, for example, you're going somewhere, or you've come back, or you've been somewhere that a friend or an acquaintance is going, and you don't tell them, you don't warn them of the dangers. You get these apps that tell you, which direction to take. Well, if the app told you to go this direction, you went that direction, and there's a traffic jam, or there's an accident, or the bridge is out, you wouldn't want to keep going back to that app. Matter of fact, you'd be upset. You'd be upset if no one alerted you of danger, especially if they've seen the danger. You'd be bothered. You'd also be bothered if no one told you where the good place to go. Let's say, hey, this is Christmas season. Folks are going shopping, and you're going to look for a particular gift. And after the person got it, the person knew that one of your friends knew you were going to get it, and they didn't tell you, hey, no, you should have went over here. They got the best. They had all these deals. You'd be upset if someone didn't tell you something good. If I know something good, I want to tell people. I want to tell them, hey, listen, this is where you ought to go to. Go over here and do this. Hey, don't deal with it. We do it all the time, right? We'll tell bad news and we'll tell good news. Except when it pertains to someone's safety, and certainly when it pertains to someone's spiritual well-being. We don't tell people the good news as it pertains to their well-being spiritually, and we don't tell people the bad news as it pertains to their spiritual well-being. Can someone please help me understand that rationale? When something happens and there are witnesses, the witnesses oftentimes are quiet. because this unwritten rule. Don't say that. I ain't seen nothing. I ain't heard nothing. Me, officer, no, not me. Meanwhile, somebody's life might be devastated. The entire community could be just in an uproar or in shambles because people aren't letting the authorities know who the bad guys are, the people that are actually no good to the community. How crazy is this? Think about this for a second. How crazy is it to know that there are people who are harming the community and you protect the very people that are hurting your community? You protect the very people that could possibly end up hurting you, hurting your neighbors, out of what? Fear. All right. Should Christians ignore certain things? Just, I'm going to stay out of it. I'm going to leave it alone. I won't say anything. Matter of fact, if Christians have that kind of attitude where it's not my business, I'm going to let them deal with it. I'll take care of mine. You take care of yours. That shouldn't be the attitude. All right. Sometimes Christians can be jerks, and we shouldn't be jerks. We shouldn't be jerks. Look what he says in Ephesians 4:25. He says, therefore, laying aside falsehood, speak truth each one of you with his neighbor. All right. Well, one day I was taking a nap. I'll never forget this. I got up to use the bathroom. It was the middle of the day, and a guy who I really didn't like that much, he was kind of annoying, but he asked me what I, about some stuff that was going through with the laws and so forth. And I thought, well, this doesn't apply to me at all. But I went and asked my case manager anyway, and she said, well, I thought I told you that. That's why I asked you for your wife's address. Now, she told me that this was just procedural. So here I am thinking I've got several more years left in prison. And next thing I know, hey, pack your stuff. We're getting ready to send you home. And I'm thinking, wow. And what had happened was I'd gotten to a point to where, like Paul was, I can say this and I can look God, anthropomorphically speaking, face to face, look him in his eye, and he'll know that, yeah, he's telling the truth, that I trust God implicitly, completely, without fail. Because I had a Paul moment that I've been up and I've been down, but whatever state I'm in, I am content. And so I was content serving him in prison, and I'll be content serving him once I get out. But once I get out, I'll be ready to hit the ground running. And so far, so good. So because truth is, and I haven't gone over the whole testimony, maybe I will later on, but I've still got, according to my original sentence, I still got a few years left. So I should, what time is it? I should be getting ready for the 4 p.m. national stand-up count. But here I am on this meeting with you, Scott, and with Justin. So yeah, I can see the fingerprints of God all over this.
How long were you there before you got out total?
I was like Joseph. I was there 13 years.
What?
13 years.
Wow.
Yeah. All right. And I believe that was the beginning of my downfall. Because if I don't honor this woman, then God is not going to even hear my prayers. Well, what happened was this. All of a sudden, it's like God just started blowing on everything. And so the vice president, he leaves. This person who's over our mortgage division, he leaves. This person over insurance leaves. Our main office administrator, she leaves. I didn't realize how much she actually ran the office. Then this other one, this operations manager leaves. It's like this happened, bam, 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 bam. Everything's happening. Lord, what's going on? Well, the Lord was trying to tell me, Corey, you know good. And so I'm going to deal with you. And I'm not going to deal with you the way that I deal with regular lay people. No, because here you are supposed to be a pastor. And I got something for you. Remember, guys, people who teach, they are under a stricter condemnation when they fail. And I fail hard. And so my thought was this, Lord, why? Yeah, I was involved in sin, but I still love you. You know my heart. I was not trying to intentionally hurt anybody. I just because I made up my mind that I'm going to build this up and I'm going to do it for your name.
Yeah.
God, you know my heart. And I think he said, yeah, I know your heart. That's why you're getting 20 years. We are told to contend for the faith. Why? Again, it would be good if we could just simply have this discussion about doctrine and so forth, whether we agree or disagree as brothers, but we have to contend for the faith, contend for the true faith. And notice what it says, to contend for the faith, earnestly for the faith, and this is the noun. This is not a verb, so not contend for those that are believing, but contend for the faith, the tenets of the faith, the things that we believe in. Contend for that. Why? Because certain persons have crept in unnoticed, those who were long beforehand marked out for this condemnation, ungodly persons who turn the grace of God into licentiousness and deny our only Master and Lord Jesus Christ. Not that they deny that he is the Lord, that he died on the cross, no, but deny the power. As a matter of fact, try to usurp and take power for him, for themselves, and claim to be something special. That's how they do so. But again, the Bible tells us, especially in 2 Timothy 4, Paul is on his deathbed. Paul, interestingly enough, says that while he's dying, to be on guard for these people, these false teachers, people who have resisted their message. And interestingly enough, the name that's used there, he says, beware of Alexander. Well, I agree with Paul. Beware of Alexander. In this case, beware of Alexander Pagani and those like him who will distort the scriptures, try to make it seem as though they have some sort of power, especially when they don't go to the scriptures to back up what they're saying, but they will use it to kind of twist and kind of run scriptures together, tie them together that have nothing to do with the other, just to make a point, which they do. We've chronicled this in the past. And so, Alexander, we're going to keep telling people to beware of you. No matter how many times you might file a copyright strike claim, we'll keep going. If you've got a problem with that, well, then you might want to address, not necessarily me, doesn't matter if you ever address me, but you need to address this bad doctrine that you are presenting before the people. During this time, and it's just me and God. I did have my Bible, so I could read, but it's just me and God. Well, I get a letter. The letter came from the United States Court of Appeals, said that your appeal had been denied. 2-1, I believe it was the 2-1 was the ruling. And so it was possible, as a matter of fact, even advisable that I would go ahead and file citing new evidence to have the whole thing tossed out. On its face, everyone said, you should win. What did I do? I said at that moment, you know what? No, I'm not filing anything. At that moment, and this was about 6-7 years left on my sentence. No, God. Toss it away, threw it away. It's in your hands. Lord, as the psalmist says, you vindicate me. As a matter of fact, when we look at that passage in Psalms 26:1, it says, vindicate me, O Lord, for I have walked in my integrity, and I have trusted in the Lord without wavering. And here it is. Examine me, O Lord, and try me. Test my mind and my heart. For your loving kindness is before my eyes, and I have walked in your truth. You can only really pray that prayer if you have been walking with the Lord. And that's it. That's the secret, guys. If you know, and only you know better than anyone else, if you've been walking in him, only you know how you have behaved, how you have spent time with him. And so it's really kind of a test. Try me, examine me, as he says, and see. But how does he start off by saying, what's the first thing he says? He says, vindicate me, O Lord. I do want relief. So when you let the Lord defend you, it's not saying that you don't want to get any relief, that you want to take whatever comes. That's not the point. It's not give me it all, because you don't have the ability to take all that can be given to you or put on your shoulders. But what you're doing is you're saying, Lord, if I'm wrong, you'll deal with me. If I'm right, you'll release me, however it is. The question was asked, Corey, this was by an inmate, didn't you love the Lord before you came into prison? Weren't you a Christian? Yeah.
All right.
One thing I never did, and no one could ever say they heard me say so, was me complaining about it's not fair.
Hold up. Hey.
What?
One thing I never did, and no one could ever say they heard me say so, was me complaining about it's not fair.
Are you serious?
One thing I never did, and no one could ever say they heard me say so, was me complaining about it's not fair.
Come on, man. Come on, man. Come on.
One thing I never did, and no one could ever say they heard me say so, was me complaining about it's not fair.
Oh, Lord.
You just don't get it, do you? You don't.
One thing I never did, and no one could ever say they heard me say so, was me complaining about it's not fair.
You ain't got to lie. The lies. There you go. This bitch. The lies.
This nigga was clearly lying.
Now you see now, you f***ed up, you know that, don't you?
what should have been a 1 year, 2, 3 year sentence at max. I'm told that, Corey, you're looking at 1, 2, maybe 3 years. At the most, maybe 4 or 5, but you've got a real good shot of getting probation. Okay, cool. What did the judge tell me? He told me 240 months. That's 20 years, y'all. That ain't 3, 4, 5 years. And
For one time offense?
Yeah, first offense.
And what was the charge? Mail fraud? What was it?
Mail fraud. 1 count of mail fraud. And oh, by the way, I pled guilty. Who gets the maximum sentence? The maximum sentence for the 1 count was 20 years. Who gets a maximum sentence for pleading guilty?
Me! That's who!
You plead guilty because you're making it easy for the prosecution, and so in exchange you get a lighter sentence. That's the whole point of it.
All right.
I could have went to trial, and at the end of the trial, got up and cussed the judge out and everybody else, and still got no more time than they gave me on a plea. Who gets that? Me.
That's who!
Hello, and welcome to the BCV channel. I am your host, Pastor SaikoWoods. Please do the following. Please like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell at the bottom of this video. That way, whenever I go live or post any content, you'll be one of the first to view it. Also, if you'd like to support this ministry financially, first and foremost, thank you so much to those of you who have been so gracious and committed and faithful to supporting the BCV channel, and also Love, Life, and Marriage with the Woods. We do appreciate it. Thank you so much in making this ministry a part of your support. But if you also like to support this ministry by becoming a body lifers are those who support this ministry outside of their local church. We do believe in supporting the local church, but if the Lord has blessed you with residual resources and you would like to sow into ministries like this and others that preach the word of God and stand upon God's word and his truth, then you can do so. There's no obligation. You can start and stop at any time. There is no promises made or anything like that, other than we will use your gifts to continue the ministry and the work that the Lord has called us to do here on this channel. But you can go to the links below, and you can use any of those links at your leisure as you choose. Those who support the ministry through the super chat through YouTube, we do appreciate it, and thank you so much for that as well. Some have been under the impression that when they send their gift through the super chat, we receive that immediately upon receipt. Actually, that's not the case. We don't receive those gifts until the following revenue cycle. So, just wanted to let you know you can utilize the donation links below, or if you still choose to use the Cash App option, the super chat option, then you can do that as well. But we do thank you so much for that. Moderators, thank you for holding it down. Facebook family, welcome. Good to see everyone. For the sake of time, I'm not going to go through any roll call right now. This is a subscriber only live stream. And so moderators, just wanted to make it helpful for you and less stressful for you as much as possible. But we want to get right in to today's topic. This is part 3. This is part 3 of the United States versus Corey Minor, the transcripts, part 3. And this video will be about the witnesses. On yesterday, you heard the victim impact statements from those who have been affected by Corey Minor's frauding and Ponzi scheme. And actually, that word is going to be used in the court documents. Yes, you'll see it later on in the live stream. But we're on part 3, and this is going to be more information. Got a lot of pages to cover, but I want to give you all an update. I want to provide to you an update regarding Corey Minor. He made the following statement on yesterday, I believe, a day or so ago, on that goat over there. Stands for TGOT. I basically call him a goat because Christians don't respond and act the way that he does. But he basically takes videos of mine and then he, makes mockery out of it, takes things out of context, just like Michael Thief and the Temple Williams done, and so forth. And so basically, Corey had made a comment on his channel. And so what I want to read to you is Corey Minor's actual statements regarding my video and the transcripts that I have used to explain and to give more evidence and proof that what we are dealing with is a fraud, is a liar. And I question whether or not Corey Minor is a Christian. Here's what he said. This is a day ago. You can go to that goat over there or that girl over there, because I don't know who he is or she is. Sounds kind of gay to me, call another man say. I never, anytime a man says some stuff like that, it looks kind of sus to me. My gaydar goes off. I'm just saying. But anyway, this is Corey's statement on that goat over there's YouTube channel. He says, quote, "Funny thing is he's reading my sentencing transcript that I've already read on a live stream. This transcript, by the way, costs money," Corey says. "Money that he either doesn't have or that is tight. Yet he would rather spend it this way. That is, unless his friend Taryn got it for him. May God bless him." So notice here what he says is that he's already read this transcript on a live stream. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to ask you, those of you right now, do you know? Can you recall, can you give me the actual video where Corey Minor actually read the entire 114-page document of the transcript? Does anyone know? I'm really asking. Does anybody have any information regarding this? If so, I would love to see it. I would love to be referred to the video in question that he stated. Ashley, you said no. How long have you been following Corey also, Ashley? And I'm glad to see you here. Thank you. I appreciate you being honest and even going through this. I know it's very hard. Proverbs, you said never has Corey read his transcript. Okay. David, you said he never mentioned that he read these things. Gary, you said never saw it. God's Child Jay says you never saw it. Has anybody seen this transcript? Or maybe it's with Hillary's emails. I mean, hey, it could be lost somewhere in the emails that Hillary Clinton, I don't know. I'm just wondering. But he says that he covered it. He says he covered it. And I would love to see it. Yeah, Gracious, I understand that. I understand that, but since I don't know who this individual is, where I'm from, that's kind of gay, and that's rather sus. And since this individual refuses to face me as a decent human being, I don't really engage cowards. That's why I don't go on their channel, because all this stems from is an old white guy who has been abusing women for almost over 4 decades, who's on his way out the door, mortally speaking. And so this is where all this is coming from. People idolize and suck up to John MacArthur, and you touch their idol, and so these no names and these randoms come out. But I would love to know, really, where's the transcript? I have mine, but where is it? Yeah, maybe he is. Maybe he is claiming it by faith that he not only did he read it, but that he read it on his live stream. It's the same Corey Minor that said that he had the video after he was being confronted for caping for John MacArthur. He said he had a video apologizing shortly after he called for John MacArthur's to be stepped down. And when that was pushed, you know, we didn't find it. Matter of fact, he made it private. Y'all remember that? He made it private. So this is a man who's known for lying, who's known for covering up. I mean, the track record, it seems rather sus to me. But that's just me. That's just me. But let me go back real quick to his statement, because again, we got a lot to cover, but I wanted to give you this update, because he said, funny thing is, he is reading in my sentencing transcript that I've already read on a live stream. This transcript, by the way, cost money. It didn't cost a lot of money, Corey. It really didn't. It didn't cost me a lot of money at all. It's not expensive to get a transcript, a court transcript. So this is another lie. He said this transcript, by the way, costs money that he either doesn't have or that is tight. How would you know? How would you know that, Corey? And notice, do y'all notice what this is, ladies and gentlemen? Do y'all notice what he's doing? Do y'all notice what he's doing and what he's saying here? This is called a non sequitur. This is called deflection. This is called a straw man. Instead of addressing, and also ad hominem, instead of addressing the issue, instead of him trying to attack the issue, he wants to attack the person. Or answers to the issue, he wants to attack the person. And so this is what you see. It doesn't change the fact whether or not I got it, or Taring gave it to me, or I paid for it. The question is, are those documents true? Is what happened true? And I'm pretty sure, ladies and gentlemen, can I just ask you a question? Can I just ask you all a question? Based on what you've read in these transcripts so far, who's lying? The court or Corey Minor? You tell me. I'll wait. I'm just saying. But not only did he make that comment, but then remember, he made this statement here. Not one person is owed money. Not one person is owed money, Corey says. Gary828, what's up, Gary? He's in the chat. Gary828 on that same channel, that goat over there's channel, responded to T-Got. Or I believe he may have responded to Corey. Gary, you can clarify that, because I don't follow that. I receive this information from other people. So this is what Gary said. He said, "What do you think about Seiko's last 2 videos of court transcripts that show Corey actually stole people's life savings in retirement?" That's a good question, isn't it? And that's a fair question. That's why he got the 20 years. But Corey never mentioned that before. He said he merely borrowed funds from an account briefly before paying it back. But it turns out it was a lot more to the story he didn't mention. So is Seiko still the villain while Corey is the hero? I mean, that's a good question, isn't it? A lot of publicly documented testimonies about the damage Corey did to them and their families say otherwise. Do y'all see that? That's a great question, Gary. And thank you so much for inquiring, for those of us who wanted to know. But notice what this man said. Notice what T-Got said. Do you see this? You see what the question was? He says, "They're a waste of time. Seiko is a delusional man who can't find content that honors Christ. So he spends hour upon hour trying to discredit Corey." I guess you meant to say he. But nonetheless. So I'm the delusional one by reading court documents and facts. This is delusion in and of itself. But it's funny though, these people don't want to cam up with me. I mean, they know where I am. Why are you hiding behind other people? So he takes my image, he takes other people's images, he takes Pastor Zarius Reamer's image, and then he uses it and posts it on his channel. And then you have the mob and Corey going over there and welcoming him on their channel and things like that. But this is what Satan does. So it ain't gonna stop me. I'm gonna continue to keep on pushing. Because, people that don't show themselves, why would I waste my time? But I'm just giving you all the information so that way you see who Corey is hanging with now, who Corey is partnering with, which speaks to his character more than anything else. But oh no, you can't leave this individual out. Miss Furlow. Notice what she says. She says, I already knew about Corey's past. Corey talked about it several times. Apparently, she's just as delusional and deceived. And oh, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, Miss Furlow is not even a Christian. She's not even a Christian. She's not even saved. Remember the interview that I had with her. She didn't know what the gospel was. She didn't even know how a person gets saved. So just look at the cast and characters of this motley crew. You have a thief, a liar. You have a few thieves in the mob now. You have thieves and liars. You have slanderers. You have a whole group of people that, according to Scripture, how can you identify as being a Christian when you are practicing these things? So Miss Furlow says, I already knew, about Corey's past. Corey talked about it several times. Corey does not need to repent to Seiko. He has already repented openly by acknowledging his sins before God and God's people. How would she know? She knows nothing about the gospel. Absolutely nothing. Doesn't even know how a person gets saved. So this fool is talking like she is a woman of God and a woman of faith, and she's not. Nothing can be further from the truth. She says, I forgive Corey. Oh, that's good to know. And I do believe he's trying to make this right. I will do all I can to donate to his channel so he can pay whatever he needs to pay back to the people. This is so sad how Seiko's sins are forgiven and not Corey. My spirit is so grieved. Oh. Just wanted to share that with you all. Just wanted to share that with you, to let you see these are the people, these are the individuals that that comprise the mob. You said, why are you wasting time on this stuff? Because it's worth valuable time. I'm not sure, Militant, if you are new to this channel. I believe you are. So welcome. But hopefully you'll watch part 1. Because I would think if your family member or yourself was defrauded and cheated out of money that you entrusted to a professing Christian in his Christian business, then you would want someone to sound the alarm and to speak in your defense as well, too. I would just assume that. But that's one of the reasons why. All right. But let's get to some scriptures, shall we? Excuse me. Let's get to some scriptures. Let's get to the Word of God. Let's look up some text here, because I think that it is very important for us to have a biblical basis for what we do. So let's go to the Word. Proverbs chapter 28. Proverbs chapter 11, verse 28. Proverbs 11, verse 28. He who trusts in his riches will fall, but the righteous will flourish like the green leaf. Thank you, AT, for the super chat, brother. Thank you. Proverbs 19, verse 22. What is desirable in a man is his kindness, and it is better to be a poor man than a liar. So Corey, while you warning and focusing on my pockets, how is yours? I'm not known to be a thief. Everything I have, I've earned it. I didn't have to defraud and steal to get anything. So Solomon says it's better to be a poor man than a liar, Corey. Proverbs 23, verse 4. Do not weary yourself to gain wealth. Cease from your consideration of it. Verse 5 says, when you set your eyes on it, it is gone. For wealth certainly makes itself wings like an eagle that flies toward the heavens. Proverbs chapter 28, verse 6, it says, better is the poor who walks in his integrity than he who is crooked, though he be rich. Hey, Corey, can you state that? See, one thing I may not have, and one thing you lack that I have, by God's grace, because that's the only way I have it, is integrity. People have to worry about leaving their belongings to me and wondering when they're ever going to get it back. So people have died waiting on their money to be reinstated and restituted to them because of your lies. See, you are what the Bible would call a crooked man, Corey, because see, the reason why I'm calling you crooked, Corey, is because you keep perpetrating lies. You perpetually lie about your case. So I question whether or not you're saved because you haven't repented. And this is why I played back your own audio, your own videos, and its context. You can't be trusted. You're not a man of integrity. You'll be considered a crooked man, although you had money, and you boasted in that. You said, man, we were millionaires. You were millionaires off of other people's money, Corey. How are you calling yourself a millionaire by milking innocent people of their money? But let me get back. Let me get back because I got some transcripts to read. Proverbs 28, 16 and 18. It says, a leader who was a great oppressor lacks understanding, but he who hates unjust gain will prolong his days. Verse 18, he who walks blamelessly will be delivered, but he who is crooked will fall all at once. Proverbs chapter 30, verse 7 through 9. Two things I ask of you. Do not refuse me before I die. Keep deception and lies far from me. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with the food that is my portion, that I not be full and deny you and say, who is the Lord? Or that I not be in want and steal and profane the name of my God. I just want what God gives me. I don't want what God doesn't give me by coveting and conniving and lying. Corey, can you say that? 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 8 through 10. If we have food and covering, with these we shall be content. But those who want to get rich, like Corey Minor, fall into temptation and a snare and many foolish and harmful desires, which plunge men into ruin and destruction. Why? For the love of money, not money itself, but the love of it, Corey. See, you love money. That was one of your pitfalls besides loving women. You love money. And with that inordinate desire, because whatever you love, that's what you're going to serve. And so you served money. Money didn't serve you. You were a slave to money. And so what happened? It became a root of all sorts of evil, obstruction of justice, falsifying statements, forgery, intimidating witnesses, those things. For the love of money is the root of all sorts of evil, and some, by longing for it, have wandered away from the faith. Corey said he was saved in 1991. That's us. Have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. Yeah. Corey Minor. You have yet to biblically repent for what you have done because you keep lying about it. And if you keep lying about it, then you have not been truly changed, let alone saved, sir. People have died broke because of Corey Minor. But yet he says no one is owed anything. Do y'all hear the arrogance behind this man? What born again Christian says that? What regenerated born of the Spirit, elect of God, says something like that. Over $2.8 million, this man says he owes nobody, anything. That's what Corey says. But he has his moderators, he has his Mobites, he has all these people. And this guy has yet to publicly tell the truth. And he keeps doubling down on lies and then making more lies on top of lies. Where's the transcripts, Corey? Shouldn't people have that? If you read it on a live stream, then produce the receipts. Because most of the viewers here who had been following you, Corey, know nothing of this transcript that you said that you've read on a live stream. But they know about it now because I'm reading it. So what we're going to do tonight, we're going to go into some more of the court documents. Are y'all all right? We're 43 minutes in. 43 minutes in, and I want us to get started. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to take this from the beginning. What I did was I had given the transcript statements from Corey, which was part one. The late Pastor Willie Bolden, he is now with the Lord. I gave other statements. Part two yesterday was the victim statements. And to give fuller context, I read again Pastor Willie Bolden's, because here's what happened for those who don't remember. Pastor Willie Bolden was sitting there, and he was supposed to be the character witness for Corey Minor. And as he's sitting there and hearing and listening to all of these tragic stories of people who were defrauded by a fellow minister and someone under his authority, he couldn't just be a character witness for this man. He had to be a Christ follower and tell the truth about this man. So much so was his loyalty to God's word and to his truth, he told the judge, give him the maximum sentence. That's the only way he's going to learn. And what does Corey do? This man is gone. He's died. And what does Corey do? Corey lies against the dead man. If I'm making it up, tell me. You were there in the interview that I had with Corey Minor a year and a half ago. He had us all to believe that he was railroaded by the criminal justice system, that the judge threw the book at him for no reason, and that he only went to prison for one single count of mail fraud because he mailed off something, borrowed some money from an account, and was going to put it back. Remember, all of this is what Corey Minor said. He made it seem less offensive than what it was. He dumbed it down. He distilled the details. That's what he did. He didn't give us all of the details. He distilled it. He not only did he distill it, but he hid it from us. He hid it from us. But can't hide these anymore. And so this is the court documents. This is page number 2. As you can see, line 1. Court reporter's notes. Thursday, October 4th, 2007, Sherman, Texas, U.S. District Judge Richard A. Shell presiding. This next case is styled United States versus Corey Minor, docket number 407 CR 48. U.S. Attorney Andy Williams is here for the government. Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon, Your Honor. And Defense Counsel Cindy Buckner. Good afternoon to both of you. And Defense Counsel Cindy Buckner represents Corey Minor. Good afternoon to the both of you. Good afternoon, Judge. Ms. Buckner, have you reviewed the pre-sentence report with Mr. Minor? Yes, I have. Okay. Now, I see that there are objections to the report. Is that correct? Yes. Objection number 1 has to do with the calculation of losses incurred by some of the victims. Mr. Minor contends that the loss calculation is incorrect and that the number of victims is incorrect. Do you want to be heard on that, Your Honor? Since that pre-sentence report was filed, the attorney for the government and my client and I have discussed the restitution amounts, and we have agreed on all but the amount owed to one of the victims. And they have prepared a document for the court, which I don't believe has been filed yet regarding that amount or those amounts. All right. Mr. Williams, Your Honor, I think that the defendant is not objecting to the amount of loss for intended loss purposes, but merely for restitution purposes. And we have been meeting and conversing constantly about the restitution amounts. We have been working, finding bank accounts, and we have prepared what I've marked as Government's Exhibit 4, which sets out the names, addresses, and amounts of restitution that the government and defendant have agreed on. And they have come to an agreement on all the victims except for one, and that is Mr. Sterling Carberry. We prepared to go forward on the evidence on that day, Your Honor. And if I may approach the court to admit Government's Exhibit 4, all right? Any objection? Any objection, Mr. Williams? I'll provide defense counsel a copy. Any objection to the Government's Exhibit 4, Ms. Buckner? I don't see where that one was left off. Mr. Carberry's name is not on this list because we haven't agreed to it. It's only the victims that have been agreed on. And that's everybody but Mr. Carberry. So the list contains everyone except that one victim? That's correct, Your Honor. All right. No objection then, Your Honor. Okay, the court will admit Government's Exhibit 4. So does this list essentially replace then what is in the pre-sentence report, except for Mr. Carberry? That is correct, Your Honor. And the number we present today on Mr. Carberry will probably be different than what's in the pre-sentence report. We apologize, Your Honor, but there are so many bank records. There are so many bank records and documents to be examined. It's been ongoing since the case began and since the defendant entered his plea. All right. So there's no chance then in the intended loss, only in the restitution amount. That's my understanding, Your Honor. Is that correct, Ms. Buckner? Well, yes, Your Honor. The intended loss was agreed on prior to the plea. So the intended loss in the pre-sentence report is not objected to? Yes. Okay. How should we resolve the amount regarding Mr. Carberry? Do you have a witness? Do you have witnesses? We have witnesses, Your Honor. And before we pass on, I think they objected. I think they're withdrawing their objection about there being less than 50 victims as well. I think we had discussions that victims could be victims even though there were no losses, if the money obtained from the victim was obtained by fraudulent statements to begin with. All right. Ms. Buckner, are you sticking with your objection to the number of victims? Yes, Your Honor. Or are you withdrawing that? Yes, we're still objecting to the number of victims being over 50. Okay. How many victims do you contend there were? 49. All right. Okay. So I need to resolve how many victims there actually were and the amount of restitution owed to Mr. Carberry. Is that correct, Mr. Williams? Sir, I think the only thing we're arguing about on this particular issue is evidently whether or not there were more than 50 victims. And I can present some evidence quickly on that. Our evidence would be that this was essentially a Ponzi scheme in which some victims were paid back with other victims' money, and that some victims received their investment money back. But it was originally obtained by fraudulent statements, which would make them fit the definition of a victim for the sentencing guidelines. And we're prepared also to move forward to establish a restitution amount for Mr. Carberry. And I briefly have two witnesses to present on the issue of obstruction that was pointed out in the revised pre-sentence report, the letter sent to victims. I could probably do that with less than 10 minutes of testimony, okay? Who do you want to call on those two issues regarding restitution for Mr. Carberry and the number of victims? We'll call Ms. Lauren Cooksley, who is a financial examiner from the Texas State Securities Board, okay? And I'm going to call on the issue of obstruction. I'm going to call on Lisa Finley, the postal inspector in the case agent, and Mr. Rodney Singleton, who was here in attendance as well. Okay. I think I can do that with those three witnesses. Are all three of them here in the courtroom? Yes, they are, Your Honor. Would you three come forward, please? Just come right up here in front of the clerk. How are you this afternoon? Good. How are you? Good. I need the three of you to raise your right hand, and the clerk will place you under oath. The oath is administered. Tell me your name again. Rodney Singleton. And your name, please, ma'am? Lauren Cooksley. And your name, Lisa Finley. Is the rule invoked for purposes of this hearing? No. We're not asking it to be, Your Honor. Okay? Go ahead and have a seat. Who do you want to testify first, Ms. Cooksley? Yes. I would ask that, at least for the purposes of the rule, that Ms. Cooksley not be excused and that Ms. Finley not be excused. I have no objection to excusing Mr. Singleton. Well, the rule is not invoked. No one invoked it. So who is first? Ms. Cooksley. Okay. Come on up and have a seat. Ms. Cooksley, and how do you spell your name? And she spells her name. And Lauren, and she spells her name. All right. Mr. Williams, Your Honor, before we proceed, I would point out that the defendant stipulated in the plea agreement that there were more than 50 victims. But I understand they want to contest that now. We'll go ahead and put on evidence. Okay. Direct examination of Lauren Cooksley on behalf of the government. Would you state your name for the court and for the record, please, ma'am? Lauren Cooksley. And would you tell the court how you are presently employed? I'm a financial examiner with the Texas State Securities Board. All right. And how long have you been in that position, ma'am? 3 years, 10 months. All right. And did you graduate from college? Yes, sir, I did. And where did you graduate? When and what kind of degree? University of Texas at Dallas. I graduated December of 2001 with a business administration degree. All right. Sir, would you tell the court briefly what are your job duties as a financial examiner at the Texas State Securities Board? I perform routine and targeted audits of financial firms registered with the State Securities Board, and I also investigate customer complaints. All right. And did the Texas State Securities Board initiate and conduct an investigation of Corey Minor and his business, Christ Minor? Yes, sir, we did. All right. And in fact, you and an attorney there, Mr. Ronak Patel, who is in attendance today, worked closely with the postal inspectors in accumulating and analyzing financial documents pertaining to Mr. Minor and his clients. Is that correct? That's correct. All right. And you worked directly on an investigation. Is that correct? Yes, I did. All right. Did you review certain bank accounts to determine from bank records the amount of restitution that Mr. Carberry would be owed in this case? Yes, I did. All right. And what methodology did you follow in order to come up with the restitution figure for Mr. Carberry? Well, I followed the bank statements, and as a transaction came up that involved Mr. Carberry, I entered that into a separate spreadsheet and accumulated all of the deposits that Mr. Carberry gave to Mr. Minor, and in addition, any payments Mr. Minor gave to Mr. Carberry. All right. And as you look at several of Mr. Minor's bank accounts that he controlled where he deposited money, I reviewed approximately 20 bank accounts controlled by Mr. Minor. All right. May I approach the witness, Your Honor? Yes. Ma'am, I've placed in front of you what's been marked for evidentiary purposes as Government's Exhibit 3. Do you find that there? Yes. All right. Would you quickly tell the court what the stack of records are or is? The first is a spreadsheet I created with all of the transactions I identified from the bank records involving Mr. Carberry. Let me stop you there. Is that Exhibit 3A you are referring to now? 3A. Let me ask you first about Exhibit 3. I'm sorry. What is Exhibit 3? Exhibit 3 is all of the bank records, bank statements, and supporting documents that involve Mr. Carberry. All right. And these are the bank records that you gleaned and copied from the examination of the 20 various accounts. Is that correct? That is correct. All right. How would you tell the court what Exhibit 3A is? Exhibit 3A is a summary of my review of the bank records. All right. At this time, I would move to admit what's been marked as Government's Exhibit A. Any objection, Ms. Buckner? Your Honor, no objection to it being admitted as an exhibit, but the contents are not evidence in the case. Well, they are evidence. If I admit the exhibit, why do you say that? Well, I hadn't had an opportunity to review it completely against all his records that were handed to me today. Well, do you want to take a few minutes and look at it then? If you need me to look at it, have you not seen this exhibit until today? No, I haven't, Your Honor. But I don't doubt that it correctly, listen to this. No, I haven't, Your Honor, but I don't doubt that it correctly and accurately reflects all the amounts in these documents to the best of the ability of the parties who prepared it. But we are disagreeing as to whether or not these documents are complete and represent the total of the transactions between my client and the Carberries. Okay? Well, you have a chance to put on whatever evidence you have then. But this is apparently Mrs. Cooksley's summary of her review of Mr. Carberry's bank account. That's correct. Okay? I'll admit government's Exhibit 3A. And by the way, as both sides know, the rules of evidence don't apply to sentencing hearings, so the court can consider matters that it might not otherwise consider a trial. Go ahead, Mr. Williams. For the purposes of the record, I believe the court, a minute ago, identified these as the records of Mr. Carberry's bank accounts. These are actually the records of Mr. Minor's bank accounts he controlled. Is that correct? That's correct. The summary was put together using the bank records that Mr. Minor controlled. So these are not Mr. Carberry's bank records. All of the entries on the spreadsheet are deposits from Mr. Carberry or payments to Mr. Carberry out of the accounts controlled by Mr. Minor. Okay. You examined Mr. Minor's bank accounts and you looked for deposits that came from Mr. Carberry that were given to Mr. Minor, correct? That's correct. And then you examined these bank accounts to look for any disbursements or checks that Mr. Minor might have given to Mr. Carberry, correct? That's correct. All right. So that you could see what was taken in from Mr. Carberry, what was given back to Mr. Carberry by the defendant, correct? That's right. Okay. And did you examine all of the accounts? You said that there were 20 that you had that you were aware of that Mr. Minor controlled. That's correct. I went through all 20 bank accounts over various periods of time while those particular accounts were open. And these were the transactions I identified as belonging to Mr. Carberry out of those 20 accounts. Okay. And what efforts did you make to make sure that you had all of the accounts that Mr. Minor might have possibly used? Well, when the state agency subpoenaed the bank records from the various banks we were able to identify, we requested all accounts associated with Mr. Minor and all accounts associated with the name Christ Minor. All right. And do you recall off the top of your head what banks those were, what banks you did receive, you subpoenaed and received, or what banks you did subpoena? Yes. All right. Could you tell us those, please, ma'am? Okay. Bank of America, State Bank and Trust Company, JP Morgan Chase Bank, Dallas Teachers Credit Union, also known as the Credit Union of Texas, Compass Bank, and Washington Mutual Bank. All right. Based on your examination of these records, did you determine that more money was taken in by the defendant from Mr. Carberry than what was dispersed back to him? Yes. All right. And did you represent that figure, what was not dispersed back to him, as a net loss on the third page of this exhibit? I'm sorry, on the second page of this exhibit? Yes. It's represented as a loss. All right. And what is that amount for the record, please, ma'am? $1,382,065.75. All right. Do you know whether or not conversations were had between postal inspectors and Mr. Carberry to confirm that this amount was correct as far as Mr. Carberry himself was concerned? Yes. If you know, yes, I was given that information. All right. And is it your understanding that Mr. Carberry agrees that our figure is at least much closer than what the defendant is contending? Yes. Okay. I'll pass the witness, Your Honor. All right, Ms. Buckner. Cross-examination of Laura Cooksley on behalf of the defendant. May it please the court? Ms. Cooksley, is it possible that there may have been some disbursements that were not recorded that were represented by these documents? I assume there may be. It's possible, but not likely. I did a thorough job going through all of the bank documents that were provided to me. But if Mr. Minor were to represent that there were disbursements made monthly and that those amounts are not reflected on this, you can't be absolutely sure that that's not true. Now, I want to stop right there for a second, because the attorney is asking Ms. Coochley a question that you're going to find out later on if the burden of proof is on Ms. Coochley or on Corey Minor. But she asked the question. She said, if Mr. Minor were to represent that there were disbursements made monthly and that those amounts are not reflected on this, you can't be absolutely sure that that's not true. Well, if those disbursements came from an account that I didn't review, then that's likely. If the disbursements came from one of the banks that I listed as one of the 20 that I reviewed, then I would be able to see that reflected on those bank statements. I passed the witness. You see what happened there? Okay. Nothing further, Your Honor. All right. Thank you, Ms. Coochley. Who will be your next witness? On the issue of restitution on Mr. Carberry, this is the only witness that I have, but I have two other witnesses if it would be easier for the court to put those on in connection with. On the number of victims and the obstruction issue. Okay? All right. Ms. Buckner, do you have evidence on the restitution for Mr. Carberry that you want to present? We call Corey Minor. Now, this is Corey's moment, ladies and gentlemen. He said that he had affidavits and stuff that prove that, anyway. Cause I can't follow all the lies that he made, but there's no affidavits in anything from him regarding this case, just to let you know. But here's the direct examination of Corey Minor on behalf of the defendant, Ms. Buckner. Mr. Minor, you reviewed these documents today along with me, yes? And you heard the testimony. Do you disagree with the amounts represented for restitution to the Carberrys? Yes, ma'am. And why is it that you disagree? Here's the answer, ladies and gentlemen. He says he disagrees with the amounts represented. And still she asks him, and why is it that you disagree? His answer, I can't be sure of the exact amounts because today is the first day I'm seeing the records since they were confiscated. But I know that there were checks that were sent on their behalf that weren't made necessarily to their name, which would account for why she would not have seen, for example, I know of a check to the IRS that was made to the IRS. Mr. Minor, were there regular disbursements made to these clients of yours? Yes. How often would you make disbursements to them? I would. I'm pretty sure the way they were set up, they were done monthly. They had various different investments they were trying to go into, and the attempt was to have them receive income monthly. Okay. So this statement or this spreadsheet should represent almost a monthly, if not a regular monthly. Yes. Disbursement to them? Yes. And do you have any documents to prove, or excuse me, do you have any documents of proof of these statements? I would have to look at the bank records myself. Today is the first day I've seen them since they were taken. So I have to go through them. I haven't had that opportunity, but they should be substantiated by the bank statements. So your documents were all taken by the government? Yes. So your recollection or your statement here today that there were other disbursements made is based on what? Well, I know we sent some. No, how you know you sent them? How you know you sent them? I just recall. I remember some of them pretty vividly. Still no evidence, but okay. That's my opinion. It's based on that. Ms. Buckner states, and she says, okay, I'll pass this witness. Mr. Williams, cross-examination of Corey Minor on behalf of the government. Mr. Williams, Mr. Minor, you said that this spreadsheet is incorrect because it doesn't reflect checks that you made or checks you paid on behalf of Mr. Carberry that were paid to third parties and because you made monthly disbursements regularly. Is that correct? Yes. Is it one or the other? Both. Both? Okay. You mentioned that you made a check payable to the IRS. Is that correct? Yes. And do you recall how much the amount of the check? In the 70s? I can't remember exactly. Does the figure $68,000 sound correct? I'm not sure. Somewhere around there. I'm not sure. I just know it was to the IRS. All right. And in fact, you paid that check to the IRS because of a mistake that your firm made that cost Mr. Carberry extra taxes. Isn't that correct? No, actually, his CPA contended that it would. We contended that it wouldn't. But he said, but just to kind of be on the safe side, we went ahead and did it, even though I don't think that particular transaction would have caused any extra taxes, any extra taxation to Mr. Carberry. So it is your testimony then that you, to summarize, that you paid the $68,000 to pay a tax bill for Mr. Carberry, correct? That was one transaction, yes. I can't be sure of the amount, and he contended that it was because of your mismanagement of a problem or of your fault that the taxes were incurred and the way you handled the account. And you went ahead and to save the argument, you paid the taxes. Yes. And let me stop right there. Actually, the year of this transcript is 2007. This is the court case that was taken in 2007. So Corey, his answer is yes. Is that your testimony? All right. What other checks did you pay to him for third parties? I know we paid to a mutual fund company, American Funds we paid. Let's stop there. How much did you pay to the mutual fund company, American Funds? I don't have the figures in front of me. It would be hard to guess. I'd be guessing. I couldn't say exactly. I know the first. Let me ask, when did you make that payment? I think those were for the most part all done in 2005. What bank account did you pay that out of? What bank was that account? I want to more than likely Bank of America. All right. Well, you've heard the testimony here that we have the Bank of America records. The State Securities Board has the Bank of America account, correct? That's your bank. Bank of America was subpoenaed for your accounts. And it's just going to be a check to American Funds. It would say the check would be payable to American Funds, and it would have the account number on the bottom of it, or their American Funds account number. Would it make any difference to being for the benefit of Mr. Carberry? Would it make any reference, to being for the benefit of Mr. Carberry? There may have been a couple, but for the most part, they just made payable to American Funds and then for the benefit of that account number. Well, would you have anything referenced on that check so you would know which client that came from, that it was on behalf of Mr. Carberry? No, we didn't. Just the account number. You would have his account number. His account number. His account number with your firm. No, at American Funds. Well, how in the world would you ever tie that back in your business records to prove that you made that payment on his behalf? Well, we would keep a copy. We would keep a record of when the check was sent out. Well, but if the check, what record would you keep to show the check was sent out? We would keep it on QuickBooks. On what now? On QuickBooks. Okay. And does that tie back? What tie back is there to Mr. Carberry's account to prove that you paid that to Mr. Carberry? Because the check certainly wouldn't reflect that, would it? That you paid that for him? No. Just kind of comparing our records. And if we didn't pay anything to them, anytime that we were late or there should have been disbursement, he would definitely give us a call or at least send an email or something saying that, hey, this needs to hit this American Funds account. Well, my question is, what record did you keep to establish that you made that payment to American Funds on Mr. Carberry's behalf? Only the records that were in QuickBooks. Well, what record would it be in QuickBooks? I'm not exactly sure what it's called. It's not like, I guess I'd call it kind of a check ledger, kind of a showing who the checks were made for. And so under his name, I could kind of pull it up and see that this check to American Funds was made on what date and what amount and so forth? Did you print your checks electronically? Or were they out of a checkbook? They were. I guess you'd buy these things from QuickBooks. These checks that we had printed up tied to the different bank accounts, and we would print them there. So there's no paper ledger checkbook that will reflect. You mean we wrote it down physically? Yes. No. Other than just what the computer generated. All right. What other checks did you pay to a third party on his behalf? I know we paid one. I think it's called PRM. What is PRM? I think it's like a trust or something that he had. When did you make a payment to that entity on his behalf? I'm thinking the early part of 06. It may have been 05. But you have no recollection of when it was. I can't remember the exact date, but I remember it was somewhere around $110,000. It was around $110,000 in 05 or 06. Is that your testimony? I want to say the early part of 06. It could have been 05. All right. And what evidence do you have that payment was made? The same. It will be found in your QuickBooks? Yes. Which is on a computer? Yes. Now, have you ever requested any access to those computers from the government or from the postal agents to establish those payments? Yes, sir. And when did you do that? Actually, in the very beginning, I was just told that that was a part of their evidence and that they couldn't show me that. My contention is not that. My contention is not that I don't owe. I just want to make sure who is owed is accurate. All right, sir. Any other payments to third parties? To Pershing? Pershing? Not the Pershing that you control, but another Pershing? Yes, sir. How much was that? I know initially their first amounts were somewhere in the range of the actual account was in the range of $200,000. All right. What account was that payment made out of? That was early on. I'm not sure. I want to say Bank of America. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. All right. It would be hard for me to, at that time, we had 4 entities. We had the overall incorporated company. We had the investment company, the insurance company, and the mortgage company. And I couldn't tell you offhand where the different accounts we had. I think 3, maybe 4 different accounts for the investment side. All right. What about these monthly disbursements? What is it your contention that you made monthly disbursements to Mr. Carberry? Yes, sir. How much were these monthly disbursements? Were they always the approximate same amount? No. They varied when they were based off of these bond purchases. And depending upon the amount that they were supposed to pay in interest, it may vary. It also depended upon how many shares were supposed to, how many bonds they were supposed to have. What account did these come out of? They would come out of the Washington Mutual account. They would come out of the State Bank account. They would come out of the Bank of America account. They may also come out of the Bank One account. All right. Well, you heard the testimony of Ms. Cooksley, correct? Uh-huh. They issue subpoenas to these banks that you have mentioned that these accounts would have come out of. Can you offer the court any reason why they wouldn't see Ms. Cooksley in her examination of these accounts? Wouldn't see payments that they wouldn't see payments like that to Mr. Carberry when she's obviously spent a lot of time examining the accounts? Can you offer any rationale to the court as to why she may have missed any? I couldn't tell you. I just know that every month there were disbursements coming out, going to their account, and they were made payable to Mr. Carberry, correct? Yes, sir. Okay. That's all I have, Your Honor. Okay. Ms. Buckner, that's all I have, Your Honor. All right. So, Mr. Minor, you said that you did request access to your books and records and your computer at some point in the past? Yes. Ms. Buckner, did you ask for did you ask for access to the government's financial records to prepare for this hearing? No, Your Honor. We have gone over them together. I did not independently have access to those records. Well, all right. You said earlier something about you just got some records today, some bank records, but you've gone over those before with Mr. Williams. Is that correct? We had discussed the amounts. All those records relate to the one particular victim, and that's the only one that we had not agreed on. Yes, but you are telling me that you did before this hearing go over these records that Mr. Williams gave you. Now these records regarding this one particular victim, no. Oh, now those? No. Have you asked for access to those? No. Why not? Because we've been discussing the amount off and on through this whole process and getting closer and closer. I just didn't feel I needed to unnecessarily independently review these particular records. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Then in other words, you are comfortable with the summary that has been prepared of those records. Yes. Okay. All right. And obviously the summary prepared for us by Ms. Cooksley shows an amount of restitution to Mr. Carberry of $1,382,065.75. Am I looking at this chart correctly, Mr. Williams? Is that correct? Yes, you are, Your Honor. Okay. All right. Now, Mr. Carberry has testified that he recalls making monthly payments to, Mr. Minor recalls that he has in the past made monthly payments directly to Mr. Carberry, but he doesn't have any explanation. He doesn't have any explanation as to why Ms. Cooksley would not have so discovered those payments in looking at all of Mr. Carberry's bank accounts. What banks, Mr. Williams, did you say? What banks did Mr. Williams did you say were examined by Ms. Cooksley that Mr. Minor used in his business? I made some notes, Your Honor. As she was testifying, I think she identified Bank of America, State Bank and Trust, JP Morgan Chase Bank, Dallas Teachers Credit Union, Compass Bank, and Washington Mutual Bank. All right. Mr. Minor, were those the banks that you did business with? Yes, sir. Were there other banks that you did business with? No, sir. Just various different accounts inside those banks. All right. Ms. Cooksley has looked at the records of your bank accounts with those banks, and these are all the receipts and disbursements that she has found. These in Exhibit 3A, which you have a copy of, I believe, right? Yes. But you are saying that these were more, but you're saying that there were more disbursements to Mr. Carberry than are reflected in Exhibit 3A. Is that what you're telling me? Is that what you're telling me? I believe so. Like I said, today is the first day that I saw this. And there were a couple of ones that I noticed them from before when we talked to them before today, that I noticed that they weren't so that we'll both have a copy. Ms. Buckner, would you give your copy to Mr. Minor and let him look through it? It's only 2 pages. May I be heard briefly, Your Honor, at this point? Yes. There are payments, and I can call the witness back to establish this, but it appears on the face that she's taken into account payments that have been made to Pershing. Several of them payments that were made to American funds. Let's see. A number of them. Where are those? Let me get my official copy, Your Honor. On the first page, you will see, all right, yeah, the first one. The first check is to Pershing. The second check is to Pershing. The third, Pershing. Fourth, Pershing. Fifth, Pershing. Sixth, and then we get to a distribution. And then the next one is a check to Mr. and Mrs. Carberry, it looks like. Honestly, I can't tell. Well, Your Honor, I may need to put on some evidence because it's to establish that this is part of the scheme too. Because there is a Pershing Securities that Mr. Minor set up an account in the name of Pershing so that if people wrote a check to Pershing, they would think it was going on to the real Pershing. So some of these checks to this Pershing are, I think, to him, the Pershing account. So there's a Pershing, that's a third party here. Yes, Your Honor. That receives money to invest for investors? Yes. But Mr. Minor also had his own Pershing account. That's part of our what we can clear up through the witness. That's the part of the scheme. Okay. What it looks like, but there are payments to American funds too. All right. The lines are not numbered, but it looks like the 9th line shows $79,100 paid to paid to Mr. and Mrs. Carberry and a part paid to Pershing, if I'm reading that right. Total deposits, that's in the column of deposits. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's correct. Okay, that's right. These are deposits. Okay. Well, if the court wants to look a little farther down, there's amounts of $3,000, $62,000, $27,000, $3,000, $3,000, $4,000, $3,000 to $4,000 American funds listed as distributions. Yes, I do see those. Okay. I do see a number of distributions to American funds. So those have been captured apparently. Some of those checks to American funds were not included. It says dollar value not included in the totals because in the examination, Ms. Cooksley found that those checks were returned. Return from American funds? Yes. I'm sorry, return. Insufficient funds? Yes, by American Funds Bank. Oh, I see. Okay. Mr. Minor, on the first page, it looks like these are payments, distributions to Pershing, American funds. There's one large distribution of $63,000 to account distribution. What would that be? Why would your memo say account distribution? This might have, I'm not sure why, what amounts these may have been. It may have been there was something supposed to be maturing that day. I'm not sure. And then you see those checks down there to American funds. Yes, sir. The number of them. And then there are also checks, as you see, to Mr. Carberry. On the second page, there are checks that's at least 6 checks deposited to an account number. And there's a particular account number. Now, what would that be? Would those also have been to American funds, Mr. Carberry's account number? It looks like it. Yes, sir. Okay. It looks like she does have the American Funds stuff accounted for. Okay. If I may be heard, Your Honor, there's at least one entry on here where it shows a distribution that was paid out to what was evidently the real Pershing Fund. If you see a check made to the Pershing Fund, it is under deposits. That's a Pershing Fund account that was controlled by Mr. Minor. Let's see. Clear this out. Sorry. Okay. Okay. Well, it appears that the payees that you have gone over with it appears that the payees that you have gone over with Mr. Minor here, that he recalls, according to him, that he paid on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Carberry. The payees show up on Mrs. Cooksley's exhibit here, Exhibit 3A. Except when the IRS and PRM, whatever that is, because there are checks here to the Carberrys. There are checks here to Pershing, and there are checks to American Funds. All right, now you've looked at the government's Exhibit A, Mr. Minor. What, if anything, do you contend is missing? I'm not sure if the original I think was $200,000. I'm not sure if that should be included in that. Again, I'm not sure how she calculated all this. I'm not sure if that should be included or not. So it's hard. The original $200,000 of what? Of what they invested that actually is at Pershing. And then there were some, we were just kind of looking at this. My attorney and I were just looking at this, kind of making notes on some of the distributions that we had that I noticed they weren't on here as well. They weren't very large, maybe a couple thousand here, a couple thousand there. To who? To Mr. and Mrs. Carberry. Like I said, I'm just now. So you think there are distributions to the Carberrys that Miss Cooksley for some reason didn't see? Would you have had memos on the checks showing that they were to the Carberrys? Well, the way that I determined that there were probably some there were some that were missing. Like I said, I just now saw this. but there were the actual statements. Even though the actual statements weren't, these were statements that I worked off and on also that the Carberries worked off of, that showed that this amount was coming out on this date. And I wrote those down. Some of those, I'm not sure how many of them. I haven't had enough time to kind of look at this and compare it with that. Compare it with what? With the different distributions that I noticed from what I had come up with, because my problem was still that, I never saw the actual bank statements until the Bank of America bank statements and the other things that they took until today. So, but your lawyer has seen them. I don't know if she has seen the Bank of America statements, the actual Bank of America statements. Ms. Buckner, I thought you said you had seen everything except the stack that's on the table there that corresponds with what's in Exhibit 3A. We discuss other things and there's no objection to the other amounts. Did you hear that? We discuss other things and there's no objection to the other amounts. Okay, all right. The reason why I mentioned that about the bank statements is because it was hard for me to say, if asked, it's hard to answer. It's hard to answer, Is this amount that I'm agreeing to, is this the right amount? Because I don't have anything to try to draw it off of. Okay. I know that something is owed. All I can do is give you an opportunity to show me what other amounts are missing and to substantiate that. That's why I'm asking you and your lawyer right now if you can substantiate that. The only thing that I can definitely say for sure that I know is not on here is the stuff about the IRS and to PRM. And then also depending on how she calculated it, whether the $200,000 to Pershing should be on there or not. Offhand, I mean, I couldn't. It would be real difficult without a lot of time to try to figure out what other amounts were missing, if any. Okay. $200,000 to Pershing. All right. Now that you're saying $200,000 that you dispersed on behalf of Mr. Carberry to Pershing. No, it went to Pershing. Yes. Okay. All right. But that would have been coming out of one of these bank accounts that Ms. Cooksley looked at, right? I can't remember how, because I can't remember how the whole transaction took place. It is really difficult for me to try to remember where and how it took place. What about the $191,000 here? That's almost $200,000. Which one? The $191,000 at the bottom of page 1. That's the deposit by the Carberries, Your Honor. Well, it says in the memo, paid to the order of Pershing. But that was the one we took in. It didn't go to the actual Pershing, but I don't know why it says paid to Pershing. I don't know why it says paid to the order. Okay, all right. Your Honor, that's because, as we explained, he had an account in the name of Pershing as well. It was a part of the scheme. Investors. From Pershing to Pershing, pardon? From one Pershing to another Pershing is what this is? Is what this is. No, there is an actual Pershing investments firm. Let's say, for instance, like a Fidelity Funds or something. And to make investors think their money was going to Fidelity Fund, he would have them make it out to Fidelity Fund or something. And then he had an account that he controlled in the name of Fidelity Fund. But instead, he controlled an account in the name of Pershing. So when victims would give him a check made out to Pershing Securities, they would think they would think that was going off to a third party, but it went into his account that he controlled. All right. To wrap this up, then, Mr. Minor has testified that he thinks but cannot be sure that there's $200,000 that he dispersed on behalf to the Carberries to Pershing, and that he made a disbursement of approximately $70,000 to the IRS for the Carberries, and he made a disbursement to PRM of approximately $110,000. Anything further on this dispute, then? Anything from the lawyers on how you think I should resolve that? Your Honor, I could call Mr. Carberry is here in attendance. I could call him real quick. Okay. I have not talked to him about this, but we can find out from him. That's fine. Any other questions for Mr. Minor, Ms. Buckner? No. Mr. Williams, any other questions for Mr. Minor? No, Your Honor. All right. Mr. Minor, thank you. I'll tell you what, before you call Mr. Carberry, let me just ask, let me see if I have any questions for Ms. Cooksley. Well, Ms. Cooksley, if there were a disbursement of $200,000 to Pershing on behalf of Mr. Carberry, then who would have picked that up in your examination of these bank records? No, excuse me. If there were a disbursement of $200,000 to Pershing on behalf of Mr. Carberry, then you would have picked that up in your examination of these records, correct? Yes, that is correct. So how did you come across checks and examining the bank records that had no memo? Yes, I did. Okay. Now, as a matter of fact, you have a couple of checks. You have several checks here with the memo. How did you know to attribute those checks to Mr. Carberry or some involvement with him? The checks were made to Mr. Carberry from one of the accounts controlled by Mr. Minor. Okay, all right. So you did find other checks not paid to Mr. Carberry with no memo, correct? Yes. And so you didn't count those. If it's not referenced as a victim's name, there was no way for me to attribute that. I understand. But are you saying that there was some of those? Yes. Whether or not they were made payable to Pershing, I can't say. Do you recall whether any were made payable to the IRS or PRM? There was one check payable to the IRS on behalf of the Carberrys. Mr. Williams explained that he did not include that in our loss figure because it was an expense incurred as a part of doing business with Mr. Minor. Okay, but you don't remember anything about PRM? No, Your Honor, I don't recognize that. Okay, thank you. Anybody else you want to call? We'll call Mr. Carberry, Your Honor. Mr. Carberry? I think he needs to be sworn in, Your Honor. Okay. Mr. Carberry, would you raise your right hand and the clerk will swear you in? The oath is administered. Mr. Carberry, would you spell your name for the court reporter? First name is Sterling. Last name is Carberry. Thank you. Direct examination of Sterling Carberry on behalf of the government. Mr. Carberry, you and I have not met or spoken before. Is that correct? I talked to you, I believe, once on the telephone a couple of months ago. Okay. To find out about a sentencing date that had been one set. Yes. Okay. Other than that, we haven't discussed the facts of your case, correct? Right. You've been present in the courtroom and heard the testimony of the defendant and of Miss Cooksley. Is that correct? I have. And you are the same Sterling Carberry that invested funds with the defendant in this case, Corey Minor, correct? I am. Are you a certified public accountant? I was. I let my certificate lapse, but I have a bachelor's in accounting and a master's in accounting and did have a CPA certificate. Very briefly, let me ask you, were you aware, did you ask the defendant to make, you heard him testify he made some $200,000 payment to a Pershing Securities on your behalf. Did you ask him to make that? Was that payment made? I don't know how it was done. The very first investment that we made was a check that we got from Morgan Stanley to close out an account that was, I believe, $301,000. We endorsed that to Pershing LLC. The check cleared. Now, whether that went into his Pershing account and whether that went into his Pershing account and was then sent to Pershing, I don't know. We did not include that $301,000 in the loss because we had an actual account that showed up with SynCab, and that was not a loss. That was actually investments that were purchased through SynCab. Okay, let me ask this. You heard the testimony about PRM or PRL, and to my knowledge, there was never a check cut to PRM. I've never received any interest payments on any money that I don't know where it came from. We had talked about flipping money and exchanging because PRM was taxable to me and some of the investments that I had thought that I had. Okay, but just bottom line for the court, did you ever ask him to make a payment to PRM? No. And to your knowledge, was one ever made to PRM on your behalf out of your funds? No, it was never. No, it was never. All right. You've heard the testimony about receiving monthly payments every month. Did you receive a monthly payment every month? There was usually payments due either for interest or for a bond that supposedly had matured. Those were the only payments that we got. All right. You have talked to the postal inspectors about the figure that they were going to present here for restitution, correct? I did talk to them as recently as yesterday. All right. And they did find 4 or 5 entries that because I did an independent, and they did find 4 or 5 entries that because I did an independent calculation of what my loss was. All right. And they found 3 or 4 entries that I did not have on my books. And as of yesterday, we were within $200 of agreeing on the exact dollar amount. Okay. May I have a minute, Your Honor? Yes. Your Honor, there are several witnesses in attendance today, but I've been advised that 3 of them wanted to address the court. I don't know if you, Mr. Carberry, is one of them, if you want to hear from him, or if you would rather wait and hear from them all later at another time. I have no more questions from Mr. Carberry. Ms. Buckner, do you have questions? Cross-examination of Sterling Carberry on behalf of the defendant. You know, the lawyer who basically is ineffective and didn't do anything for Corey. Ms. Buckner, this is her speaking. Good afternoon, Mr. Carberry. Do you recall the amount that your figures show that are due in restitution? Before today's conversation, it was $1,406,000, and we took approximately $25,000 off of that. It was between just short of $1.4 million. And I have all the paperwork out of my car, but I didn't bring it all in. But like I say, Ms. Cooksley and I were within $200 of what I had calculated versus what she had calculated. Thank you. That's all I have. Okay. Anything else, Mr. Williams, other than allowing Mr. Carberry to say whatever he wants to say? Mr. Williams, were you $200 more than Ms. Cooksley's figure? Yes. I was $200 more because there was about $200 worth of expenses that I had not taken. That was a reimbursement for expenses that I had incurred that he reimbursed me, that I didn't show the income of the expense. Okay. So her figure was actually $200 less than what you had, correct? That is correct. Thank you. After further, Your Honor. All right. Then regarding the amount of restitution owed to Mr. Carberry, do you want to be heard on that, Ms. Buckner? Is your objection? Do you want to be heard on it before I let Mr. Carberry go? In case I have some questions for him. Your Honor, I just submitted to the court and asked that you allow Mr. Minor credit for the payments that he believes he made that aren't reflected in this. Do y'all hear this? Do y'all hear this? Now, she's supposed to be is supposed to be throwing Corey under the bus. She's supposed to be not representing him, but she knows that Corey has nothing. But notice what she said. Your Honor, I just submitted to the court and asked that you allow Mr. Minor credit for the payments that he believes he made that aren't reflected in this. If belief was money, we'd be rich. He says, okay, all right. Mr. Williams, anything you want to say? No, Your Honor. All right. The court is going to overrule the objection to the amount of restitution owed to Mr. Carberry. The court finds that the audit done by Ms. Cooksley as well as the testimony of Mr. Carberry provides sufficiently reliable information for the court to rely upon the figure that the government has presented to the court, which is $1,382,065.75. Mr. Carberry, did you say that's within $200 of what you had calculated? Yes, sir. All right. I had done my calculation a long time ago because my CPA who does my tax returns said that in order, It said that in order, if I amend the tax return, that I have to show the dollars I paid out and the dollars I got back. So I've been working on that 7 or 8 months, and the state found 3 or 4 that I had not picked up because they were in individual accounts. So we talked as recently as yesterday on this. Okay. Mr. Carberry has testified that in connection with the original investment to Pershing, he endorsed a check from, did you say Morgan Stanley? Morgan Stanley, correct. Morgan Stanley for about $300,000 to Mr. Minor. He doesn't know if Mr. Minor then invested that in Pershing, but the check cleared, and that was simply an investment. Legitimate investment, yes, sir. Yes, and that he never requested Mr. Minor to send a check on his behalf. So the court finds that the information from the government as well as Mr. Carberry is reliable, and the court will rely on that. Adding $1,382,065.75 to the $1,492,403.88 that the parties have agreed is the correct restitution for the other victims in this case. The court comes up with a total figure of restitution, $2,874,469.50. Is that figure you came up with, Mr. Williams? May I have a minute, Your Honor? Yes. We came up with 63 cents, Your Honor, and then there's laughter in the court. I mean, I would have to laugh too, because they ain't playing. $2,874,469.63. I think you're right. I just added it up on this calculator and it said 50 cents, but I believe you're right. It has to be 63 cents. 63 cents. $2,874,469.63. Okay, that's correct. And Your Honor, we have prepared, if it makes it easier, what I admitted earlier as Exhibit 4 was a list that contained everybody's name and address and amount except for Mr. Carberry's. We have prepared a list that includes everything on Exhibit 4, but for the convenience of the court, if it wants to also, it has Mr. Carberry's name, address, and the amount that the court just found for Mr. Carberry of $1,382,065.75 if we are going to order restitution pursuant to a particular exhibit. Okay, how is that marked? Well, I haven't marked it because I didn't know if it was going to be admitted, but I'll mark it as the government Exhibit 5. All right, I'll allow Ms. Buckner an opportunity to examine it. Ms. Buckner says, I have no objections other than what we discussed as far as the amounts. Okay. May I approach? Yes. I'll offer Government's Exhibit 5. Government's Exhibit 5 is admitted. That's the first issue, Mr. Carberry's restitution. The second issue has to do with the number of victims. Is there still a dispute about the number of victims? Did you say that there was, Ms. Buckner? Your Honor, we did agree prior to the plea that the number of victims is over 50, and we'll waive objection to that. Okay, that objection is withdrawn. So notice, she was objecting to it at first, and now she withdrew her objection of it being over 50 because there were. He says that objection is overdrawn. The third issue has to do with obstruction of justice. Is there an objection to the enhancement for obstruction of justice, Ms. Buckner? Yes. All right. Notice she's going to bat for Corey, but Corey said that she was not representing him. Thank you, Mr. Carberry. I'll come back to you and give you a chance to speak. Do you want to be heard on your objection, Ms. Buckner? You do want to be heard on your objection? Ms. Buckner now speaks. She says, Your Honor, in addition to what's contained in my written objections, I just would like to say that Mr. Minor did not intend to obstruct justice. He discussed with a friend regarding a letter to be written, and it was his understanding that the friend agreed to do this for him. And there was never any intention to obstruct justice, there was never any intention to obstruct justice, to frighten any witnesses or any victims, or to influence them to adjust what they feel they're owed or make any obstructions to this proceeding at all. I have no witnesses. Well, does Mr. Minor admit that he drafted a letter and sent it using Rodney Singleton's name to a victim, encouraging the victim to write the court to ask the court not to sentence Mr. Minor to prison? Is that correct? Yes. But the intent was not to obstruct justice. Well, the intent was simply to let the victims know what could happen. Well, but he used someone's name without their permission. Is that correct? Well, no. Whether or not there was permission, Mr. Minor denies that he did this without, even assuming he did it with permission. He signed or used someone's name to try to influence other victims that they should write the court to ask the court not to sentence Mr. Minor to prison, correct? Yes. All right. And Mr. Minor had been instructed as a condition of his release pending sentencing that he not contact any victims directly or indirectly, correct? Your Honor, in Mr. Minor's mind, he wasn't contacting them. He was just assisting a friend who wanted to do that for him. Man, she sounds like she's throwing him under the bus, doesn't it? Sounds like she just basically not even trying to defend him at all. Man. But it was Mr. Minor that mailed the letter, correct? And it was Mr. Minor who wrote the letter, correct? Yes. And Mr. Minor used someone else's name as the signatory on the letter, correct? They weren't signed. They were, yeah. Well, he used someone else's name at the bottom of the letter, correct? Yes. Okay. Anything that you would like to say, Mr. Williams? Well, Your Honor, I can very briefly present the evidence. It's our contention, based on interviews with Mr. Singleton, who is here today to testify, and the agent, that he approached Mr. Singleton. The evidence would establish to write the letter. Mr. Singleton refused, and that he sent the letter anyway. Mr. Singleton is somebody who used to work for him, but was not a victim. The letter represented that Mr. Singleton was a victim like the rest of these people. All right. And so you see here, he calls Mr. Singleton, and now he swears him in, or has already been sworn in. He says, Mr. Singleton, this is a direct examination of Rodney Singleton on behalf of the government. Would you state your name for the court, please, sir? Rodney Singleton. Yes, sir. Thank you. Are you familiar with the defendant in this case, Corey Minor? Is that right? Yes, sir. And for the record, would you point him out and describe what he has on, sir? He has on a yellow jumper. We ask that the court reflect that the witness has identified the defendant, Your Honor. The record will reflect that. All right. And how long have you known the defendant? For nearly, I guess, about 2.5 years. Did you, in fact, work for him at his brokerage firm? Yes, I did. All right. And are you aware that Mr. Minor was charged with the crime that he is here being sentenced on today? Is that correct? Yes, sir. And in fact, did Mr. Minor approach you about writing a letter on his behalf? Yes, he did. May I approach the witness, Your Honor? Yes. Mr. Singleton, I place in front of you what's been marked for evidentiary purposes as government's exhibit 1. Have you ever seen this letter before? Yeah. I got home one evening and looked in my mailbox, and there were a few. I guess he may have gotten their addresses wrong, so they came back. He addressed them to my address, so they came back to me. So I was a bit disturbed when I received the letter, and because it was obvious that I didn't write it. All right, sir. Now, did Mr. Minor approach you and ask you about writing a letter such as this government's Exhibit 1 before you found these in your mailbox? Yes, he did. All right. What was the conversation? He said that he needed somebody to write a character letter for him and that it might work out on his behalf in terms of a lighter sentence. All right. And what did you tell him? I told him that it was inappropriate and there was no way that I could do it. Obviously, my friends who are impacted by this scam would obviously look at me with a skeptical eye. All right, sir. And on government's Exhibit 1, is that your name and address that's at the bottom of that letter? Yes. All right. And these were letters that were returned to you because evidently the addresses were wrong. Yes. After you found these letters in your mailbox, did you contact Mr. Minor about it? I contacted him and I told him that I had already turned it over to the appropriate authorities and I was extremely upset and that he would pay for it. And so after I hung up the phone, he was over at my home nearly 30 minutes afterwards to explain himself. And he was very apologetic later on. He was leaving my house crying. All right. Did he acknowledge that he had caused the letters to be sent? Yes. My wife was there. We sent our kids upstairs, and obviously she was very distressed about the whole situation because it implied that she was embracing him as well, as if my family had taken a great loss. Okay. Just very quickly, did you say anything to Mr. Minor to give him the idea that it was okay to have anybody send out a letter like what's contained in Government's Exhibit 1? No. After we talked about it, I got irate. And in fact, he was apologetic because I told him that he should be ashamed of himself and that it was a selfish act. And again, he was apologetic afterwards. All right, sir. But did he indicate to you that well, never mind. That's all I have, Your Honor. Okay. Ms. Buckner? Mr. Singleton, do you recall when this conversation occurred about whether or not these letters should be sent? I don't remember exactly, but I know it happened over a course of probably maybe 2 weeks or so. There was more than one conversation, wasn't there? Yeah. Uh-huh. And were you employed at that time? No. So what were you doing when you had these conversations? Were you working together or visiting? Or a couple of times he called my home. So he would come to your home. He called my home a few times and we had the discussion, and there may have been 1 or 2 times maybe that he come over. So all these discussions had either over the phone or at your home. The discussions weren't primarily related to the letter, but he had some other type of business venture ministry work, which was really the underlying event of our conversation. The ministry work was? Uh-huh. Okay. And you were helping him with that ministry work or getting involved in it with him? No. But do you recall having conversations about these letters? Not conversations about the letters, but a conversation about me writing a letter for him. Okay. Do you remember discussing what the contents of it would be? Yes. I made it clear earlier. He said that he hoped that actually his exact words were that one of his big pitches was that this would give him an opportunity to work out this new business venture that he was heading up, and would probably be the only way that the victims could get their money back. And it would be best for him to be a free man, and that would give him the opportunity to make sure everybody was paid. Did you agree that everybody should be paid if they can be? Yeah. And you don't recall giving him permission to prepare those letters? Never. That's all I have. May I redirect just one question, Your Honor? All right. Mr. Williams, did Mr. Minor, when you had this second conversation with him, when he was apologetic, did he tell you why it was he had to send the letter, or why he sent the letter in your name rather than his? Well, he knows that I have a lot of credibility in the community. And I guess he figured that me being a minister, that in some way it would have some kind of weight. Did he say anything to you about whether or not he could have contact with the victims in this case? No. Thank you. I have nothing further, Your Honor. Okay. Mr. Williams. Thank you, Mr. Singleton. Mr. Williams, I just have one other brief Williams, he says, Your Honor. All right. Who is that? I would call Inspector Finley. Okay. Postal Inspector Lisa Finley. All right. Do you spell your last name Finlay? Yes. First name Lisa? Yes. All right. Mr. Williams. Inspector Finley, would you tell the court how you are presently employed? United States Postal Inspector. All right. And are you the case agent in this case of the United States versus Corey Minor? Yes. And after the defendant pled guilty in this case, were you contacted by one of the victims in this case regarding a letter? Yes, I was. All right. Would you tell the court who that victim was? Sterling Carberry contacted the inspection service to inform us that he had received a letter from a Rodney Singleton on behalf of Corey Minor. All right. Would you take a look at what's been marked as government's Exhibit 1 there? Is that a copy of the letter? Or what is that? This is a copy of the letter that was sent to the victims. All right. Is that a copy of the letter that Mr. Carberry received? Yes. This one is addressed to Mr. Carberry. All right. And did you obtain that letter from Mr. Carberry? Yes, I did. All right. And did you do anything to determine whether or not that particular letter had been sent to other victims? Yes. All right. Would you tell the court what did you do? What you did to determine? So now, do you tell the court what you did? To determine if other victims received this particular letter, I submitted a questionnaire correspondence to each of the victims that we have listed and had identified as victims, and approximately 17 victims out of the 54 or 58. I'm not sure of the number right now responded to the questionnaire, and that 17 would include Mr. Carberry. All right. When they responded to the questionnaire, did they respond that they had received that letter? Yes, they did. The letter that's contained in Exhibit 1. I'm sorry, Government's Exhibit 1. Yes. All right. At this time, Your Honor, I will move to admit what's been marked as Government's Exhibit 1. Any objection? No, Your Honor. Government's Exhibit 1 is admitted. And that is the letter purportedly from Rodney Singleton to Sterling Carberry? Yes, Your Honor. Okay. And that letter is addressed to Mr. Carberry, but other letters, the content and the body of the letter was the same that the other victims received. Is that correct? Right. Only the salutation is different. And you said you think that there were 17 who responded to your questionnaire saying that they had received that letter? Right. And that includes Mr. Carberry. I don't believe I have anything further, Your Honor. Okay, Ms. Buckner? I have no questions for this witness. Pause for effect. She says, I have no questions for this witness. I mean, would you? All right. Thank you, Ms. Finley. Ms. Buckner, do you have any evidence on this objection? Corey Minor would like to testify. All right. Come back up. Mr. Minor, come back up. Mr. Minor, do you recall having conversations with Mr. Singleton regarding this letter? Yes. And did you ask him to do this, or how did it come up? Rodney and I had been talking a little bit about a lot of different things. We hadn't spoken since the initial investigation and up until maybe February, March. And, I just wanted to know how you doing, so forth. So we started talking, and I talked to him about what it was that I was doing. I was doing sound and lighting installation in churches and also promotional DVDs. And we were talking, and he was looking for employment at the time. And I had told him about this online deal that was referred to me that I had started doing or was going to try to start doing. I had told him about it. He asked me to email him some information about that. We talked about doing this. He asked me more about this business deal. And he asked me, really, what could somebody expect to earn from that? I was trying to do or trying to put into a bid to work at a church in DeSoto. I had already did work at my church. And he kind of asked me, what could a person, what could you expect to make on doing something like that? We kind of went over that a little bit. And we talked about how maybe we could both, probably do this together. We worked pretty well together in the past. And that, he wasn't necessarily looking for like 9 to 5 because of what he was doing in his ministry. But that he would be able to, have some flexibility to still be able to do some things to provide financially. He asked me if I could put these video systems in churches. Would I still be able to do them in homes? I said, well, yeah, actually I could. As a matter of fact, someone approached me a day later and asked me to do that. Did this lead to the conversation about a letter? The offense you are charged with? Yes, it did. He asked me, well, how is this legal situation going to affect what I'm doing business-wise? And I said, well, I'm not sure, really. At the time, in terms of what I was looking at. So one of you came up with an idea about how you would pay the restitution? Yeah. We had talked about that particular letter. Well, the idea of restitution. I told him that I needed to do something because I really wanted to get these people paid back. You know, I never intended for anyone to be out. So I wanted to make sure that I could do something to get everyone their money back. You can work to earn money, you mean? Yes. Okay. And so how did the idea of a letter get brought up? Well, he asked me how would this legal situation affect that? And by the way, what's going on in my legal situation? I said, well, we've got some people that have sent out, letters on my behalf, different people that knew about me. And I actually asked him if he would be willing to do a letter, and he agreed with that. And then we talked about that, and I said it was also someone talked about because they knew a couple of the victims that maybe I could have them write a letter on your behalf. Who? I'm sorry. That you could have who write a letter. That you could have who write a letter. Actually, in the first place, I was talking with my pastor, and we talked about, he actually wrote a letter for me on my behalf. And we talked about maybe about 30, well, no, a few minutes about two of the people that go to our church that were also impacted. One whose niece goes there, and then one of the victims themselves actually goes there. And, we were talking about, how it affected them as well. And one of you came up with, well, we just kind of mentioned writing this letter. We kind of mentioned in passing as far as having a petition. I mentioned that as well. Mention what? I mentioned that the idea had been talked about to Mr. Singleton about that. And I said, I'm not really sure how this is going to happen or whatever, but he mentioned the idea that maybe he could possibly talk to some of the people. He said that he was. So it was his idea. I wouldn't say that it was his idea, but what he said was that he could probably talk to a couple of people because he found out that he was probably more upset with the whole deal than a couple of them were. He mentioned a couple of phrases, and he said, by the way, that he may be able to talk to his father or his father-in-law because he wasn't as upset because he had actually gotten his money back some sort of way from the bank. He had gone to the bank directly and had the bank to reimburse him. And so we got to talking, and I said, well, would that be something that you would be interested in doing? And he said, yes. So we talked about it and began to talk about my family and I and so forth. And we're a family that prefers to, you are talking about the wording of the letter itself. Yes, that refers to Rodney and his wife's father. So that's how the whole part came in. I had no idea, that his father hadn't or had got his money back from the bank. We talked about the wording and so forth. Rodney thought that maybe 80% of what I bring in from this installation and video editing was probably too high. Maybe 50 to 30% would probably be about right. For what? For what? He thought that 80% of what was brought in was probably too high to pay back to the victims. But I told him what I'm doing with the production stuff, and also what I was doing I was doing weddings and things like that. Video editing for weddings would be more than enough to take care of me and my family. But the more important thing that I thought, I really need to hurry up and get these people paid back. We talked about it actually several times. I sent them several emails on different occasions, on different brochures, that we would send out. We actually went out to a few churches. So the drafting of the letter was basically done together. Yes. I mean, I did the physical thing. I did the physical timing, but what I did was Was he there when you typed it? And I guess he meant to say typing in the answer. Was he there when you typed it? No. When I typed it, I said, well, I'll put it together because Rodney, he's not, I don't know if he's not tech savvy, but well, I guess he's not really tech savvy. So I put the letter together. And we talked about it. And he said, so you tell me, how would you reword this? How would you do that? Did he see it before you printed it? Yes, he did. And he agreed to have you print that. Initially he said, yeah, that's fine. I asked him again and he said, okay, about a week. No, I'm sorry. Maybe about a day or so after these letters had gone out. I think Rodney was working somewhere already because I had also asked him about if he wanted to. I knew of someone that could probably get him on at Fidelity or maybe doing this live sale, this on phone answering service deal that you can kind of do in your spare time. He said, well, no, I've already got something else going. And then he mentioned to me that I'm not feeling this whole letter thing. I'm not sure if I want to do it. I said, well, you know what, Rodney? If you don't want to do it, then fine. We'll just let it go. I told him specifically. He called me on the phone. This was 2 weeks ago. No, I'm sorry. About a week before the letter had gotten to him, and he said they were already mailed. And I told him, well, then you are going to get some responses back. Just tell them, just disregard it. That we're going to go in a different direction. But had Rodney told me that he didn't want to be a part of it, I would not have put his name and his address. I mean, I've got other, I would have if I was trying to be deceptive. I'm sorry. Back to the transcript. If I was trying to be deceptive, I would have used somebody else. I would have used a fake name or a different address or a friend. But what was your intention? The intention is I want to make sure that I get these folks paid back. I've got some things that I guess are going well for me in terms of producing restitution. And I asked him, do you think that, after we discussed this, do you think that I didn't want to be half-hearted on board. I wanted you to be totally on board with this. He said, yeah. The most important thing is that people get paid back. And of course, that was part of the earlier conversation. How would my legal situation affect this business part about being paid back? So you really want to pay these people back? I'm working as hard as I can. I'll pass the witness. Mr. Williams? Mr. Minor, if you look at the first sentence there of that letter, this letter is representing that Rodney Singleton lost money by investing with you. Let's see. Yeah. The letter casts him as being a victim along with victims, your other victims, correct? Yes. All right. And in fact, Mr. Singleton wasn't one of your victims, was he? Not directly, no. All right. But you wrote his lie. You wrote this lie casting him so that other victims would believe that he was a victim that was for this kind of mercy, didn't you? Well, I didn't write it as a lie. I mean, he saw this, and again, he called himself a victim as well. I mean, it involved his father. Well, it is a lie that he's a victim, correct? Well, I mean, I guess some people would say that if you hurt my father, you are hurting me as well. So much for skin in the game. I thought he didn't believe in having skin in the game. Corey? Maybe that was 2007, Corey. 2008. Anyway, back to the transcript. Corey says, well, I mean, I guess some people would say that if you hurt my father, you were hurting me as well, is the kind of stance that he took. Well, it says, my family and I are victims, quote, end quote. right? And down here, it talks about, I think, something to the effect of when we get our money back, our problem will be if he gets jail time. Wouldn't you agree it's casting him as one of the victims in this thing? Yes. And at the time that we went over the letter, he didn't have any objection to the wording of it. And you wrote the letter, correct? I did the first draft, and then we kind of put our heads together as far as what needed to be reworded and so forth. And at that time, he had no objection to it. Thank you, Your Honor. Anything further? Nothing further. All right. Mr. Minor, anything else you want to say, Ms. Buckner, on your objection? No. Your objection is overruled. The court finds that Mr. Minor used Mr. Singleton's name without Mr. Singleton's permission. He sent letters, obviously, to 17 victims who confirmed that they received the letters, according to the testimony of Ms. Finley. His letter writing scheme was an attempt to obstruct justice. He was attempting to defraud the victims a second time. He defrauded them the first time out of their money and was attempting to defraud them or to trick them into writing the court a letter to ask the court to be lenient on Mr. Minor, misrepresenting that the letter was coming from another victim, which it was not. It was coming, in fact, from the defendant in the case. So the court finds that the probation officer has correctly assigned a 2-level adjustment for obstruction of justice, and the objection is overruled. Are there any other objections, Ms. Buckner? I would object that he should be given a 3-level adjustment for acceptance of responsibility. He accepted immediately upon being investigated responsibly for this and entered a plea of guilty without requiring an indictment, and that should be given that adjustment for acceptance of responsibility also. All right. Your objection is overruled. The court finds that by virtue of having obstructed justice, he has not accepted responsibility. But she's throwing him under the bus, right? I mean, she's not really giving Corey anything to work with, is she? I mean, is it me? Is it me? She's not giving Corey anything to work with. The court says, your objection is overruled. The court finds that by virtue of having obstructed justice, he has not accepted responsibility. In addition, he violated the terms of his release pending sentencing by attempting to contact the victims. Anything else? Just that the specific offense characteristics, which are a plus 26-point adjustment, accounts for my client's role in the offense. And he has also given a plus 2 adjustment, upward adjustment, for role in the offense. And that is punishing him twice for the offense itself, which this offense already, the specific offense, the characteristics already accounts for his role. I mean, she's throwing Hail Marys out. She's trying to throw everything she can to see if anything sticks. And notice, all right, you are going into objections that you didn't make on a timely basis. First of all, each of those enhancements under the guidelines is for something separate from the others. The first one is an 18-point enhancement because of the more than $2.5 million was taken in by, the loss was more than $2.5 million. The second enhancement, a 4-point enhancement, was because there were more than 50 victims, which Mr. Minor stipulated to, I'm told. I don't have it in front of me. I can print it up if I need to, but you admit that you stipulated to that in his plea agreement. The other 4-point enhancement is for violation of the securities laws. And I assume that's referring to federal securities laws that federal securities law under 2B1.1. Is that correct, Mr. Cressman? Yes, Your Honor. Okay. Obviously, it's a violation of federal securities laws to defraud investors. Mr. Minor pled guilty to mail fraud involving taking in money from investors by making false representations. The 2-point enhancement is for abusing a position of private trust. He abused the trust that these people placed in him to invest their money as he told them he would invest it. And according to the indictment and the plea, he did not invest it as he told them he would. So each of those enhancements to the base offense level is for some separate factual aspect of this case and does not punish him twice for anything. Anything else? No comments. All right. The court will adopt the facts that are set forth in the pre-sentence report. The total offense level is 37. His criminal history category is 1. His guideline imprisonment range is 210 to 240 months. And the term of supervised release is 2 to 3 years. All right, Ms. Buckner, is there anything else you would like to say before I pronounce sentence? And we're going to stop here on page 74, and I'm going to skip now to page 105 because we've already heard the victim's statement. So I'm going to go to 105, and then I have 6 pages there, and we can wrap things up. Is this shocking to y'all? Again, did anyone have this information? Matter of fact, let me go back real quick. Let me go back. Let me ask you this question. Hi, how y'all doing? Hey, Catherine, are you still in the Facebook chat? If you're in the Facebook chat, Kitty, give me a 1 or a thumbs up or something. I wanted to ask you a question if you're still here. But does anyone recall Corey reading these transcripts as he said that he did? You know, I mean the transcripts, the ones that he said that he had, that he read on a live stream. That's what he said. He said right there. Funny thing is, he's reading my sentencing transcript that I've already read on the live stream. I just want to know that anybody, did he read that in its entirety to y'all? Because if he did, I didn't want to bore y'all. I don't want to bore y'all with the details, because then we should have all known this, right? Okay. Sarah P., you said not at all. And Sarah, I hope I'm saying your name right. Welcome. I'm glad you've been following you and Ashley. Can I ask you a question before I continue on? We're almost done. Can I ask you a question if you don't mind, Sarah? Have you been following Corey? Did you used to follow Corey? Do you still follow Corey Miner's Smart Christians channel? No, Smart Criminal. I call it that. Yep, Smart Criminal channel. Do you follow his? Have you been following his channel for quite some time? Just wanted to know if you have. You said about 5 months. Okay, about 5 months. All right. Okay. Ashley, how long have you been following him? I'm just curious. But anyway, so no one has heard these transcripts. So if this is your first time, let me just because I don't want to make anybody say anything. But if this is your first time reading these transcripts live, this is your first time even seeing these transcripts of Corey Miner, put up a 1. I'm going to populate your answer. You can just say first time, or you can just put up a 1, and then I'll populate it real quick. By the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses, let every fact be confirmed. Yeah, believe it, Ashley. Believe it. All right. First time for everybody, huh? Interesting. First time for everyone. And all of you, most of y'all have been following Corey's channel for quite some time as well, too, right? Okay. All right. So you as well, 5 or 6 months. Okay, so anyway, so y'all haven't heard it. Again, I would encourage you, those of you who he has not, ignored, ask him to provide the video where he read these transcripts. Now, I will tell you, I would still look at it rather sus because, hey, if Corey can have people try to write letters it's not hard to make a video and have it appear as though it's something that was already done. But what do I know? But anyway, so I wanted to share that. So this is page 105. All right. Let's get back to the transcript, and I'll let y'all go. On page 105, page 105, this is now moving into the sentencing phase. Okay. Because remember, one of the accusations that Corey made against the judge was that basically he said, matter of fact, off with his head. That's how he portrayed the judge, is that basically the judge just threw, the book at him without giving him a fair trial and all of that. And I know I'm not making that up. I know y'all have heard it as well too. But you're going to hear what the judge has to say in these next few pages of this document. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, we went through the entire transcript. At the end of this live, you would have read along with me. This is by my maybe 56th time reading this transcript before even reading it with you all live, because I wanted to familiarize myself as best as I could with these things and present the information as it is written. And I didn't want to say anything that was out of pocket or not being informed, and so I have my brother in Christ and attorney, Tara McGrew, guiding me along this and making sure that things are being stated clearly and factually. So, page 105. We'll start at 104. Remember this statement here. One of the things another lie. Let me just go back real quick. Another lie that Corey made. Okay. Notice at the top of page 104, line 3. The judge asked Corey, there's still a deficit of $2.8 million. I'm just wondering, what did you do with that, or what you did with that money? What you did with that money? Simply just paying the people and also the expenses. I never put any of it. I didn't use any of it for home. I had my home before this started. I had my first car before this started. Maybe he buried it with Hoffa. Maybe that's where it's at. Jimmy Hoffa. Is there money from this fraud deposited in some bank somewhere? For me? Yeah. No, sir. No, sir. Or hidden somewhere? No, sir. If I could get to that money, if it were, I would do it. Just there is no money. There's no money anywhere. Okay? All right. Mr. Williams says, please the court, as far as where this money went, there's a question we've always had as well. Who could go through $2.8 million? But I can present further evidence here, Your Honor, but I don't think that's enough time to go into all of it, it all. But there were a lot of expenses. Listen to this. There were a lot of expenses. There were a lot of expenses, Your Honor. Expenditures that were, to put it kindly, lifestyle expenditures. I believe there was a $600 tab at Steak and Ale, for instance. I think there was 1 month he took in, I think, over $600,000 and was overdrawn 3 times. I mean, some of these expenses, some of the money may have been used to pay employee expenses or to pay business expenses. But there was an awful lot, of personal shopping and spending going on as well, Your Honor. But professing Christian since 1991, now on trial, convicted for mail fraud, he said he ain't used the money for a house. Notice. He didn't use the money, he said, for the house. Nowhere. Not him. Line 6. I never put any of it. I didn't use any of it for home. I had my home before this started, he says. I had my car before this started. So he's so I guess everybody lying, but Corey. That's always the case. Remember, he's waiting to be vindicated. So maybe his vindication is coming. He's just being attacked in court right now. Let's get back to this transcript. He says, yes. He said it still resulted in no, let me go back. I'm sorry. Where are we at? Yeah, here we go. I'm sorry. He says, some of the expenses, some of the money that may have been used to pay employee expenses or to pay business expenses, but there was an awful lot of personal shopping and spending going on as well, Your Honor. Your Honor, like the $600 at Steak and Ale, well, I don't want to get into 600. 600 is nothing compared to $2.8 million. Somewhere that evaporated. And I don't know what you spent it on. And maybe some of it was to pay salaries for your employees. Nevertheless, it still resulted in a tremendous fraud on all of these investors, many of whom lost what they had saved for their retirement, it looks like. But hey, the mob and the moderators, I'm just wondering how, and I know Dinah Reviews, I know LaTanya, I know Perfectly Imperfect. I know these sisters are watching this. I'm just wondering, how would you feel if this was your mother? This was your aunt. This was your loved one. This was your life savings. I'm just wondering. What if Corey Minor did this to y'all? But y'all still support him. But y'all treating me as though like I'm Corey, like I've done something to y'all. And I didn't bring up this dude's past. He brought it up. So, Carol, when you tell me that you don't appreciate me coming at Corey and bringing up his past, sister, you've been in the military. You were a colonel. You should know about getting and gathering evidence and intel before you make false accusations. But that's what happens when you're emotional. I just don't understand. Allow me 1 minute, y'all, just to say that. How do you follow somebody knowing that they are a liar? Make that make sense to me. And anybody else that moderates and that supports Corey Minor, if you can still support this man who has yet to repent and yet to stay and to say what he has actually done to these victims. He's already denied that he owes these people money, but yet he has not produced any proof, any evidence that he has paid it in full. This makes no sense. But this is the polemic. This is the polemic. Yes, thank you. Let me, it says, if the argument is, well, it's in his past, then question, would your church allow him to work in the treasury ministry? Count the offering? Make deposits to the bank? Thank you, Tarwin. Yeah, if it's his past. Would y'all invest your money in Corey? And matter of fact, would y'all invest your money in Christ Minor Ministries 2.0? And here's another thing. Since I'm on this little thing right quick, here's another thing. If FINRA banned him from being an investor because of his record and because of his behavior, why does Corey, or why would any of you still support him in trying to be a pastor? You mean to tell me that the world has more morals and more standards than the church? Okay, let me stop. I ain't gonna get in my box. I'll save it for another day. because they're not ready to listen to this. Let's get back to these transcripts. He says, line 17. I have a stack of victim impact statements. We already heard about those. I have a stack of victim impact statements from victims, all of whom lost money. I think all the victim impact statements are people who lost money. Some people apparently did not lose money, but a few, but nevertheless, their money was taken from them based upon false representations by you, is what the court is saying. Is there anything else? Is there anything that the government wants to say before I pronounce sentence? Your Honor, just very quickly, we ask that the court order prior to the indictment, the Postal Service and the State Securities Board were able to locate some small amounts of money in 3 different accounts, bank accounts. And we would ask, rather, the government is not going to forfeit those funds for the benefit of the government as it could. Rather, we want to see those funds go back to the victims. The defendant has agreed in his plea agreement, and we will ask him at the conclusion of the hearing to sign a notice of abandonment of that property. We've seized $64,810.07 in a Bank of America account and $1,110.51 in a State Bank and Trust account. We would ask that the court order the Postal Service, the Postal Inspection Service, who is holding those particular funds, to pay those over to the court clerk and to be paid out to the victims' benefit for restitution. Do I need to order the Postal Service to do that? It's my understanding that we need to have that to authorize us to pay those funds out. I've been advised that, okay? Tell me again how much they are, because that's not in the recommendation section here. I understand. $64,810.07 seized from the Bank of America. And there is $1,110.51 seized from the State Bank of Trust. Now, there was also $85,897.08 seized from Washington Mutual Bank. However, they have filed a claim on that, and it would not be appropriate at this time. And we're not asking that be the order to disperse that money, because they may have a claim. That will be the subject of an ancillary proceeding that will be decided at another time. All right. But we have not had any other claims made on the amount seized from Bank of America or from State Bank and Trust. Anything else? That's all I have, Your Honor. Thank you. All right. Now I assume that the following in the discovery in August of the letter that was written using Mr. Singleton's name, that there was a revocation hearing regarding the release pending sentencing. Yes, Your Honor, the defendant was there. There was a hearing, a contested hearing held on the violation of the conditions of pretrial release. Judge Bush initially set those conditions. Judge Love conducted the hearing, and pursuant to the evidence presented at the hearing, he revoked the defendant's pretrial release. Okay? All right. And Mr. Williams, you agree that the restitution then should be changed from what's in the pre-sentence report to the figure that we went over earlier? Yes, sir. Okay. All right. Mr. Minor, is the judgment of the court that the defendant, Corey Minor, is hereby committed to the custody of the Bureau of Prisons to be imprisoned for a term of 240 months as to count 1 of the indictment or the information. It's further ordered that you pay restitution totaling $2,874,469.63 to the victims. Any amount that remains unpaid when supervised release begins should be paid on a monthly basis at a rate of at least 20% of your gross income, to be changed during supervision pending upon the circumstances. Additionally, at least 50% of anything you receive from income tax returns, inheritances, non-recurring bonuses, and lawsuit awards must be paid toward the unpaid balance. 50% is the normal percentage that the court orders. However, I think in this case, the court is going to order that 100% of those numbers be paid toward the restitution. So all of anything you receive from income tax returns, inheritances, non-recurring bonuses, and lawsuit awards must be paid toward the unpaid restitution within 15 days of receipt. Additionally, the court will order that you pay interest on the restitution that is owed. The victims have lost their investments. They're entitled to interest on that. I'm going to, as requested by the government, order the Postal Service to pay $64,810.01 to, is that the figure? 7 cents, Your Honor. 7 cents to the U.S. District Clerk's Office. Is that who you asked, Mr. Williams? Yes, sir. All right. And also $1,111.51 shall be paid by the State Bank and Trust to the U.S. District Clerk's Office for the benefit of the victims. Actually, by the Postal Service, they seized it from State Bank and Trust, and the $64,810.07 was seized from Bank of America. All right. I'm not going to impose a fine on you because I do not want payment on a fine to impair your ability, if you have any ability, to pay the victims in this case and to pay restitution. You must, however, pay the mandatory $100 special assessment to the government, and that's due immediately. When you are released from prison, you'll be placed on supervised release for a term of 3 years. You'll be under the standard conditions of supervised release. Those include that you not possess a firearm. You must provide the probation officer with access to requested financial information. You may not incur new credit card charges or open additional lines of credit or participate in any form of gambling without the approval of the probation office unless you have paid all of your financial obligations, which include the restitution. The court will suspend the requirement that you submit to mandatory drug testing. Apparently, there's no indication of any drug problem, but you must cooperate in the collection of DNA. Mr. Minor, I've assessed your punishment at the maximum, 240 months. You have swindled a number of victims, apparently over 50, out of almost $3 million of their savings. That substantially impacts adversely their lives. And I think punishment of the maximum term of 240 months is appropriate in this case. You have a right to appeal this sentence to the extent that you presented the right to appeal in your plea agreement. Do you want me to recommend a particular prison institution for you? Yes. Segoville? Yes. All right. I'll make the recommendation, but it would be up to the Bureau of Prisons as to where you are housed. Is there anything further from the government? Not on behalf of the government, Your Honor. Is there anything further from the defense? No. All right. I'll remand Mr. Minor back to the custody of the marshal. If there's nothing further, we're in recess. Thank you. You are excused. And just in case someone tries to question the authenticity and the reliability of this document, the court reporter's certificate, I certify that the foregoing is a correct transcript from the record of proceedings. April 2nd, 2008. J. Kelly, Jerry Kelly, court reporter. I wonder what the mob says about that. I wonder. I'm just curious. How would they respond to that? Makes you wonder, right? Makes you think. If you can follow Corey, then God help you. Look at this. I just wanted to bring this up. Why are you bringing up Brother Corey's past? All this was before he was a Christian. Lie. See, that's what we already know. This individual doesn't know what they're talking about. Number one, I didn't bring it up. Corey brought it up. And he professed he is a Christian. So there. But anyway. Yeah, that'll be a question, Sean, that you need to ask him when he goes live. I mean, it is interesting how people skirt around the issues when it comes to Corey. But some final thoughts. As I mentioned to you before, some of these individuals have died. Sterling Carberry is dead. Max McGregor, he's dead. And so these people are, if they're married, are widows. Are widows. I wonder does Corey plan on taking care of these widows as Christians? You know, the Bible tells us that we are to honor widows. We are to treat people. Matter of fact, biblically, can we look at some scriptures for a second? 1 Timothy 5, 1-3. Do not sharply rebuke an older man, but rather appeal to him as a father. To the younger men as brothers, the older women as mothers, and the younger women as sisters in all purity. Honor widows who are widows indeed. Hey, Corey, you failed on all of that, my friend. You didn't. Some of these people were older than you. Some of these people, matter of fact, some of these people testified. They were your elders. You didn't honor them. You didn't treat them like a father. You took advantage of them. You didn't treat the younger men as brothers. You were not an example. You were a youth pastor, an associate minister. People who looked up to you. You took advantage of all these people, defrauded them. Older women as mothers. You mean to tell me you would appreciate someone taking advantage of your mother? Young women as sisters in all purity. How did you treat the young women? Well, we already know that answer to that question. Honor widows who are widows indeed, the Bible says. But not only that, James talks about it. Pure and undefiled religion in the sight of our God and Father is this, to visit orphans and widows in their distress. You think Miss Carberry has experienced loneliness and distress? Do you think these victims, and we're going to talk about some things tomorrow in our examination live. There is an exam tomorrow, y'all. Don't miss the exam. Do not miss the exam. There's test questions for tomorrow's exam. Lord willing. Lord willing. But James says, pure and undefiled religion in the sight of our God and Father is this, to visit orphans and widows in their distress and to keep one's self unstained by the world. I'm just wondering, I'm just surprised that Alex Pagani or Isaiah Saldivar, they haven't caught wind or gotten wind of this, or Ruslan. I'm surprised. All I know is if this were me, God forbid, this would be breaking news all over the internets. They wish this were me. They wish that I was the one in prison. They wish that I was the one that would be disqualified. They wish this. And they try anything they can do to try to destroy those who try to tell the truth and strive to tell the truth. But this man has clearly been lying, been on other people's channels and podcasts. No one holds him accountable. But yet he wants to hold everyone else accountable and wants people like Greg Locke and others to camp up with him. But he refuses to camp up with anybody that wants to challenge him and question him about his so-called salvation. How are you professing to be a Christian and you can't even admit that you broke the law? What is? Can I ask a question? Maybe, matter of fact, this is going to be a sample question. Okay, this is a sample question. This is a sample question that's going to be on tomorrow's exam. But I'm going to give you the question now that you can meditate on. What does factually innocent mean? What does it mean when you've been convicted of a felony and you served time, but you got out early? But that's another topic for another time. But what does that mean, ladies and gentlemen? What does that mean to declare yourself factually innocent while pleading guilty? That's the answer that's the question for tomorrow. You can give it to me tomorrow as well, the answer, please. But My question also is this. How are you going to take care of the widows, Corey, Miss Carberry, and others? How? I thought about this, and it makes me wonder how do we as Christians deal with people who are in sin? Corey Minor is in sin, ladies and gentlemen. He has been manipulating and he has been lying to people for profit. For profit. And the Bible, I believe, makes it clear how we are to deal with people that profess but don't practice. 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 9, I wrote to you in my letter not to associate with immoral people. I did not at all mean with the immoral people of this world, or with the covetous and swindlers, or with idolaters, for then you would have to go out of the world. But actually, I wrote to you not to associate with any so-called brother. If he is an immoral person, or covetous, or an idolater, or a reviler, or a drunkard, or a swindler, not even to eat with such a one. Just saying. Every time Corey gives his story about his prison stint, he's the victim. He says God vindicated him. How did God vindicate you when you're guilty? He doesn't vindicate the guilty. He vindicates the innocent, Corey. And you being supposedly a person that knows the languages of Hebrew and Greek should be able to understand that in English, let alone apply it. So I believe we treat Corey Minor as the Bible says we are to treat him, as a so-called brother, if a brother at all. Because Corey is lying, and Corey is a liar. The man said that let me put it up again. He said he's already read the transcript on a live stream that he's done. I hope and pray that you all will challenge him on that. Some of y'all had no problem trying to challenge me on videos that were made that you knew were lies. The echoes and sound bites. You had no problem. None. Even some of you was passing it around like mixtapes, knowing it was a lie. There's no video that I've taken from Corey Minor that is out of context, that he can charge me or prove me with slander. Not one. Not one. But it's the same Corey Minor that had no problem with the video. He agreed with some of the points that Michael Thief and the Temple Williams made. Ain't that something? Ain't that something? I'm challenging all of you who are watching this live stream, who will watch this replay. You need to demand, just like Corey Minor demands that John MacArthur step down when he was in his right mind. But now you need to demand that he produce the video, the live stream, 'cause that's what it was. It says right here, live stream of him reading this entire 114-page transcript document. 'Cause that's what he said. But not only did he say that, he said this. Did he say this? Not one person is owed money. Okay, Corey. If that's your defense, I'm going to ask you in the chat. If Corey does not owe any person any money, then what should Corey do to prove it, class? What should Corey Minor do to prove that, class? What should be the proof? I'm asking you. I'm asking you. What should be the proof that Corey Minor doesn't owe anyone anything. You better believe it. You better believe it. Show the receipts. Simple, right? Show the receipts. That's all. Yeah, he ain't gonna do that. He ain't crazy. I wish. Yeah. Don't y'all want to see it? Don't y'all want to see it? And oh, by the way, Corey, if you don't remember what the receipt is, I can tell you what it should state. Give me a minute, sir, because there's a brother who sent me this. It should state that your debt has been paid by the satisfaction of monetary judgment. That should be a clause in your document, and you should have to carry that with you everywhere you go to prove that you owe no debt of restitution. Yeah, let's see it. Anytime this situation is mentioned, you should be going on his channel, just like they do, but we coming over there with truth. Corey, let's see the restitution statement. Let's see the statement of monetary judgment. Let's see the satisfaction statement that you should have from the courts that you have paid your debt. And we need to see the transcripts. See, this is what happens when you keep talking, just like it always does. The more you talk, the more you dig a deeper hole for yourself. So I didn't bring up your past. You did. You did. So deal with it. Deal with it. Now, tomorrow is part 4. Tomorrow is part 4. And we got a few more receipts to drop. Xerxes says, if you can look the other way and not have other disgust for what a ordained pastor who says he was railroaded through the process and better yet saved the whole time, he was not saved then, period. Exactly. Facts. Corey, when were you saved? Because it could not have been in 1991, sir. When were you saved? When did Christ invade your soul? When? Because based on this, nah. Nope. But anyway, that's it. That's all I got. That's all I have. Please like, subscribe, share. Thank you all so much. I wanted to knock this out. Didn't want it to carry over for another part. I wanted to, try to do it and knock all of this tonight. Hopefully you all are being informed. If you'd like to support the ministry, you can do so by clicking the links below as well. We appreciate that, and thank you so much for that. Also, BCV, the BCV store. You go to the BCV store, you can select and choose different items there at your leisure. Yes, definitely pray for Corey and his family, but also pray for the victims. Pray for the victims. They definitely need it. Definitely need it. Pray for the moderators. Pray for those who are blindly following Corey and they rather follow personalities instead of following the precepts of God's word and his principles that we are to submit to and adhere to. We definitely need to be more discerning. What's part 4? Part 4 is examination. Is the examination. And if I have time, since you've heard the victim impact statements, you read the victim's impact statements. Tomorrow, I may give an opportunity. I may open up the floor. So here's what I want to do. You heard of the victim impact statement. I want to now give you, the viewer, to offer a viewer impact statement. You can either come on live, cam up, or if you want to email me, you can email me at SaikoWoods@yahoo.com and let me know how these videos and these developments have affected you. have impacted you as a viewer. What you see, how this situation between Corey and myself and others involved, in the body of Christ, all of it, however you want to share your thoughts, or if you would like to come on, just send me an email letting me know. And then tomorrow, so that way I can allocate time if necessary to set aside time for people to come on and cam up to have an interview or dialogue, not an interview, but dialogue. So tomorrow could be also just exam day, examination day, and then also viewer impact statement. All right. So, but the rule is this: I'm requesting that you all would email me. Again, SaikoWoods@yahoo.com. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, sister. SaikoWoods@yahoo.com. And then tomorrow, again, if you would like to, there's no pressure. And actually, I would really like to hear from you as well. Please, if you like me, email us, let us know, or if you would like to come on, that's fine. Just let me know whatever anyone's desire or intentions are. Yes, it'll be 7:00 tomorrow, Central Standard Time. 7 p.m. Central Standard Time will be the time. Okay, so viewer impact statement day. Oh, you are? Okay. And you have the email, right? You have the email? Okay. All right, cool. So I'll put it up again. Thank you, Brother Proverbs. There's the email. SaikoWoods@yahoo.com. There's the email. Sebastian says, I believe the evidence you showed is absolutely true about Corey. I no longer follow Corey. I believe your receipt is legit. Well, thank you, sir. I don't know. I don't know if they are married now. I don't know if they got remarried while he was in prison. I don't know. All I know is this in the court statements they weren't married. So I'm not sure what their marital status is now. But that is a good question. And these are questions that y'all can ask him. I mean, again, if he never opened his mouth and said anything, this would not have been an issue. So, but anyway, tomorrow at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, we're going to do part 4, maybe conclude with part 4, and then end the stream with viewer impact statements. So if you want to email me a statement, you can. If you want to cam up with me, let me know. Then that way I'll have to send you a link for you to join, and we can have a dialogue and discussion and discuss this matter. All right. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that is my time. I do thank you all so much. Thank you all so much for that. Keep me in your prayers. Keep the body of Christ in your prayers. May we be discerning, and may we be our brother's keeper to the glory of God and for the good of his people. That's my show. Thank you all so much. Y'all know the drill. Whatever you do all to the glory of God. God bless.
Thank you for sharing this night. God bless you. Good night.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.
It's over! It's over, ladies and gentlemen!
Mama, I love you. P.O.P. all the time. Right, these all good pimp spoil, baby.